You sold a company for $792 million. That was back in 2012.
Well, the sale happened in 2008, and then there was a multi-year earnout situation and a bunch of other things. It culminated in 2012, and then I stayed on for a little longer after that.
Man, I have so many questions now.
A company may be worth $100 million to investors, but that doesn't mean that anyone will come in and buy it for $100 million.
What would cause a company to not?
So volatility is the main item that you're discounting for. When I was going public, I was doing 100 million EBITDA. Valuations ranged from like $1 billion to $1.5 billion in the publicly traded markets. At the same time, Facebook was going public, and I was working with the same bankers, and I was talking to them, and they were doing also 100 million in EBITDA, but they were worth $100 billion.
You're like,
yeah, that's when I realized I'm in the most volatile, unscalable model, and I'll never build that way again.
What's up, wealth builders? Today, I've got somebody who has sold a company for $792 million, and he has an amazing story to go with it. Growing up in the gangs of LA and still persevering through it to build multiple companies that have exited and now helping entrepreneurs everywhere. I've got Ryan Blair. What's up, man?
Nice to meet you, Ryan. Well, yeah. I guess nice to see you.
Yeah, good to have you here, man. I appreciate you coming out. I'm excited to see this because I started seeing some of your content, and I know you're kingdom focused. And so I wanted to just kind of see how you built everything to this point and really just how it all happened. So thanks for coming, dude.
My pleasure. And I'm a fan of your work too, and everything that you built is remarkable. So it's an honor to be here.
Yeah, thank you. So obviously, you sold a company for $792 million. That was back in 2012. You said?
Yeah, the transaction took, well, the sale happened in 2008, and then there was a multi-year earnout situation and a bunch of other things.
Yeah,
that it culminated in 2012, and then I stayed on for a little longer after that.
Okay. Yeah, I want to hear about what that company did, how you built it and everything else. But I mean, what even got you into entrepreneurship? I know you said you had a rough upbringing.
Yeah. I was always very entrepreneurial. I had 2 paper routes as a kid, lemonade stands. And then my family went through a lot of hardship. My mom and dad got addicted to drugs and alcohol. I lost my middle class upbringing. That's the way I was raised. Went into poverty. And I saw the way entrepreneurship worked in poverty. Everybody was always hustling. Everybody was making money. In order to eat, you had to do different hustles. So I got involved with some bad kids. Got involved in all kinds of different rackets, gangs, and so forth. And I was an entrepreneur on the streets. And that's when I really learned entrepreneurship. And then later on, I would learn it professionally.
Okay. So, I mean, when you're in the gangs and everything else, I mean, what ended up happening from that? How'd you get out?
How did I get out? Well, I was facing a 4-year sentence for strong armed robbery and battery. I wrote the judge a letter asking for lenience. I prayed. I was in solitary confinement. And
How old were you, by the way, at this time?
About 15 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. And I knew that if I got the 4 years, I would become a professional criminal for the rest of my life. Because if you go to California state prison, or if I go there as a juvenile and then I'm transferred to prison as an adult, there's no coming back as a young adult, at least not in the gangs I was involved in, the environment I was involved in. So I saw it as a life and death situation. I prayed. I had a Bible in the jail cell with me. For the very first time, I thought maybe I'd be a preacher because I was hearing the echoes in the cell. And then I wrote the judge a letter for leniency. And when he read the letter, a spirit took him over. And he said, he had just been sending people to jail over and over. And I was watching it as I was waiting for my time in court. He reads my letter begrudgingly. Spirit takes him over and he says, son, you should be writing in college, not in prison. And that's when I got the dream to become a writer.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what did he do?
He granted me leniency, and he said, if he ever sees me back again, I'm going to prison for 4 years.
Wow.
So that was when I made the change. I said, I got to get out of this gang. I started getting jobs. I started doing anything I could to get out of that environment. And then from there, by the grace of God, a mentor came into my life shortly after that. And he was in real estate, and it changed my life forever.
Okay. So what was he doing? How did that relationship start to play out?
So he met my mom. My mom worked at a deli, and he met her and liked her.
Okay.
And my mom, in order to date my mom, he had to go through me. And she said, this guy wants to meet me. And I said, I'd like to meet him. And he came to the house, and he was a nice guy, quirky guy, and he was wealthy. And I thought, maybe this is my way out of the poverty that I lived in. And through prayer, I thanked God, and he ended up dating my mom and ended up becoming my mentor.
Wow. So did you grow up in the real estate game? Was that like your first experience of like, I guess, legit business?
Yes. Well, my first experience to seeing what real wealth looked like was real estate. He had 60 rental properties. And at that time, I lived in the middle class. My home was foreclosed on and taken away from me. And then I went into abject poverty. And then all of a sudden I'm seeing this man who has 60 homes. And the American dream is to own one home.
Yeah.
And here's a guy with 60. So I was dumbfounded. He had a beautiful mansion in a beautiful neighborhood outside of the suburbs of Los Angeles. And I just thought to myself, this is the dream here. I want this.
Okay. So did you work for him, or how long did that relationship last?
So I had, in a gang, my racket was a computer. We stole computers, and I stole a bunch of them, and I would reprogram them and repair them. So the first job he put me to work at was in setting up his computer systems in his office. And this is in 1995, 96 timeframe. Okay. And so these skills were very valuable, and they're very rare because people were just moving into, the internet and email and so forth. Mm-hmm. So I did that for him for a little while. I served eviction notices for him. I showed houses. I ended up helping him with his foreclosures. And then from there, I moved into the computer field.
Okay. So with that, I mean, he was just buying rentals, or was he flipping houses? Or
so he'd flip them, and then those that he wanted to keep for cash flow purposes, he would keep. So he'd buy and flip, and he'd do about 120 flips a year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So basically you got mentored by a guy like me.
Yeah. In essence, yeah.
Making it happen.
And he would send me out to do eviction notices and all his grunt work.
Wow. And then after that, you obviously already had an experience in computer science and all that. And so what then was the next stage?
Well, he insisted I go to college. So I got my GED. I went to a continuation high school prior to that. So he made sure I got my GED. Then he paid for me to go to a community college. Then I was gifted with computer sciences. So I got into Cal Lutheran based on that. And then from there, I started my first company. Well, no, I got a job in computer sciences, working in a software development firm, and became a software engineer for a period of time, and oversaw an engineering group for a period, and then started my first company.
So what was the thought? Because I mean, obviously you're probably making pretty decent money out of college. This
I was making exceptional money out of college. As a software engineer, while I was in college, I was making more money than my biological father had ever made. Yeah. So I bought a condo at something like 20 years old. I bought my first BMW. I was probably making
just balling.
Yeah, I was making $100,000 a year. And at that time, it was a lot of 1996, $100,000 a year was a good income. Yeah. It still is good today, but.
Yeah. So you're balling. I mean, why quit and do your own thing?
We bought a company out of Las Vegas. It was a gaming company, the company I worked for. And I was dispatched to a casino project in Minnesota, and I worked with the people at Mystic Lake Hotel and Casino to develop a product. And I thought to myself at that time, here I am selling them the product. I'm developing the product. Why don't I own this company? And the entrepreneurial bug got to me at that point, and I started my first company.
Okay. Yeah. So you used the money that you had saved up a little bit.
And some credit card debt, and just figured it out.
And what'd you guys build? What'd you sell?
My first company was called 24/7 Tech. So I would do computer repair.
Okay. So pretty basic, not like you're building all this new software and crazy things. You're just kind of doing what you've been doing.
Well, at that point, our byline was, if your network's a wreck, call 24/7 Tech. I would dispatch technicians to go repair your network, and I'd roll trucks basically.
Was this local or everywhere?
It was in Ventura County, California, so local. I scaled it to, we were doing about 80,000 a month kind of thing, and then I sold that and started a wireless broadband company called Sky Pipeline.
How long did it take to scale that, and when did you sell?
To 80,000 a month?
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to raise money from a venture capitalist to scale because at that time, that was my dream. And I met with a few VCs, and one of them told me, your model's not scalable. And it crushed me. And at that point, I realized I had to find something that was more scalable. And so that's when I got into wireless broadband.
Let's talk about this for a minute. Like the VCs, I mean, this is the 90s.
Yeah.
And you didn't come from this background of like, rich family or anything. And even the real estate guy really wouldn't have been raising venture capital or anything.
That was foreign to him. Yeah.
Yeah. Like we think about hard money and we don't know about that. So like, how did this VC idea become a dream? Did you just see these companies like Microsoft and everyone else like being built and you're like, oh, I guess that's just what a tech company does. You raise capital and you build, a unicorn. Yeah.
I watched a documentary on PBS called Pirates of the Silicon Valley.
Okay.
And it changed my life. On the documentary, I'll never forget, a young guy was getting the delivery of a McLaren. And he was just a young nerd.
Yeah.
And it was Elon Musk before he was Elon Musk. And I remember just being gravitated, seeing this young nerd get this McLaren. And, the premise of it was you have to raise venture capital. And it had interviews with Steve Jobs and Larry Ellison and a variety of other notable people, including Elon, before he was
really
super famous.
He was already like at that level of, not the level today, but
not nearly, but he was super young. He was probably young. Early 20s and, genius. And I thought to myself, that's my vision is I'm going to go raise venture capital. I'm going to start a tech company.
Okay. So you did this first business. It's not even really a tech company. It's just like a service.
24/7 wasn't, but I parlayed that into a tech company and did raise venture capital about 21 years old.
Yeah. Oh, wow. So how long did you have that one for?
I got out of it pretty quickly. I sold it within about a year.
Did you make any money?
No. I maybe I broke even. Maybe I probably lost a little overall, but I got an education in sales, marketing, scalability, some fundamentals around building and scaling technology. And then I rolled that into Sky Pipeline, which I acquired that company at $15,000. It was doing I paid $15,000 cash for it. It was doing a few $100s a month in sales. So it was tiny, but it had a tower and a couple customers connected to it. And I said, I could duplicate that. And then I built a cellular wireless broadband network, and it ended up covering the state of California.
Okay. So a couple of things that stick out to me. One is you weren't afraid to just move on and pivot. I see a lot of entrepreneurs who like, they build one thing, has a little bit of success, and they think it's kind of a failure to move on or to sell it or to shut it down or whatever. At a young age too, to just be like, yeah, you know what, this ain't it. I see like this isn't going to help me reach my dreams. Therefore, I'm good. I'm going to go on to the next thing. Yeah. Most people can't do that.
Yeah. It wasn't easy.
Yeah.
I had to break up with a partner that I had at the 24/7 Tech. I had to walk away from, some reputation and some comfort.
Yeah.
So it's never easy to do these things, but I've had to pivot multiple times and I've had to reinvent myself multiple times. So, that's not easy to do. And that's part of it requires courage. It requires faith. And you just know that you're going to, you don't lose anything. All growth is cumulative. So what I learned at 24/7 Tech, I leveraged into Sky Pipeline. What I learned at Sky Pipeline, I leveraged into Visalis. What I've learned at Visalis, I'm leveraging into my current, even though they're different industries and different companies and different times, it's all cumulative.
Yeah. So it's not even a failure. It's just all part of the same process of you as an entrepreneur.
Yeah. The only time it's failure is if you're not leveraging the cumulative growth, right? So if you're not learning the lessons that the season teaches you, it's a failure.
Right.
But if you learn the lesson that the season teaches you, is here to teach you, and you believe God has assigned you this project for a reason, and you've extracted what is necessary out of the assignment, and then you get a new assignment and you move quickly to the new assignment.
Right. That makes sense. So you move quickly into the Sky Pipeline, and you said this is wireless broadband, but like, for those who don't understand, like what exactly did you guys do?
So this was prior to ubiquitous high-speed internet. So this is prior to mobile internet. This was prior to DSL and cable and people having high speed.
So is this just dial-up?
No, at the time you had to buy what was called a T1, which is thousands of dollars a month in order to get a 1.5 megabit connection. I bypassed the telecom company, competed with them directly, and provided that wirelessly. So I had an internet connection on a tower, and I had an antenna on your office building here in Vegas, and I pointed at that tower, and I bypassed the telecom company altogether.
So were you just competing with dial-up? Is that what it was?
I was competing with the telecom companies' multi-$1,000 a month offerings.
Oh, because they were also wireless.
No, they were wired. So
Okay.
their wired connections would cost you thousands a month to get to the internet.
Yeah.
Otherwise, your alternative was dial-up.
I see. So when I was a kid using dial-up on AOL,
Yeah.
because that wasn't thousands a month.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you wanted an internet connection at your business,
So this is only for commercial use?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
And for high-end residential that were willing to spend commercial dollars, equivalent.
Yeah, just to get faster internet.
Yeah.
Okay, so you compete. This business is doing at that time, you said you bought it for 15 grand.
Yeah.
Only because they had a tower, I would assume.
They had it. Well, there was an acquisition for a traditional ISP, and the guy who bought it had no idea what to do with this wireless thing. And so I saw the wireless as being the future. And the reason why I saw that was I was commissioned at 24/7 Tech by the Navy to do a wireless analysis as to ship-to-shore communication and the commercial readiness of ship-to-shore communication using commercial wireless broadband infrastructure. So I had some experience in the industry prior to entering into it. I'd done some assessment and some analysis of it.
Now, did you hone in on that specific niche of what you wanted to do, or did that opportunity present itself and you're like, oh, I know what this is?
There were signs, right? So the Navy got me involved in this, and then all of a sudden I get invited to a meeting and I see an antenna and I say, this is where I'm supposed to go. This is the direction I'm supposed to go in.
Okay. So you think God was just already leading you down that path?
Every step of the way. Now I could see that perspective very clearly.
Yeah.
Perhaps at the time it wasn't as clear. I was acting perhaps on pure faith or just
coincidence.
Yeah, coincidence.
This sounds good.
Yeah. Or maybe perhaps my ego was doing more of the leading at that time. But yeah, that is definitely a God thing.
So you start it, and how did it end up scaling?
Well, so I quickly learned that the secret was customer acquisition. So I invested heavily in learning marketing and sales and different sales methods. I studied Tony Robbins. I hired salespeople. I wanted to master customer acquisition. I was an engineering-minded person. I didn't have any natural aptitude, but I needed to learn sales and marketing in order to be successful. So I spent a tremendous amount of time mastering those competencies to be able to build and scale that. And that was the secret ingredient that we had.
So, it's interesting. I was thinking about this as you were talking. I'm like, okay, clearly you're a really smart guy, data-driven, analytical type. And I'm like, okay, how was this guy in a gang? And then how did he because usually those guys aren't good at sales and marketing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how the heck did he get it off the ground? Because usually sales is the first skill you got to learn in any business.
Well, in a gang, I was selling people. I was recruiting people. I was organizing them. I was leading them.
So you already knew how to sell.
I knew how to lead people. I could take a group of 100 people and march them,
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So how did that business end up growing? What did you guys grow to? How long did it take? All that?
Well, it grew by way of great mentorship. So I brought in some venture capitalists. I raised a few $1 million. And I invested heavily in sales and marketing, sales teams and infrastructure, and then built it and then sold it to another company in 2004 when I was about 24 years old.
So about 3 years?
About 3 years, yeah.
So what were you guys doing in revenue at that time?
I was probably doing a few $100,000 a month. The transaction amount was 24 million, but my portion of that was 9. So they were a little bigger of a company than ours. And the company went on to become
the
COVID.
The VC got the other part of it.
Yeah, no, VC did. I learned everything you need to learn about VC at that age. They are sharks, and they out negotiated me and out contracted me and outplayed me every step of the way. Out politicked me, and
did they force the sale because they wanted their money back?
Yeah, and I was a green entrepreneur that was nowhere near the quality of entrepreneur they had worked with in the past. These guys had ran $1 billion plays, and here I am learning finance 101 on these guys' dime. So in retrospect, they did me a favor. They gave me a PhD in entrepreneurship and in how to successfully run a corporation. And one of the investors in Sky Pipeline ended up backing me to the tune of over $100 million in several other ventures. So it paid. I did very well as a result of that experience.
So you ended up getting $9 million as a 24-year-old.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Well, after taxes, living life like an idiot, it basically was gone pretty quickly. And I didn't get all 9 million. I'd share that with other people. I had team members, and so forth.
Yeah. But I mean, like, I guess that answers my question. What was it like getting a large chunk of money?
Well, when you're raised in our system, which I grew up watching Cribs, Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous.
You're like, I got to do this.
Yeah. So I had to go live that Cribs lifestyle. And I did that, and I did it, bottle service. And then I was broke, humbled myself, got on my knees again, prayed God for help. And then an opportunity showed up and I took advantage of it.
Yeah. So what was that opportunity?
Couple of young founders had been building a nutraceutical company.
What is that?
Vitamins and supplements. Okay. And it was called Visalis. And they'd come to me. They were out of money. They didn't know much about finance, raising funds, successfully building a business. They just knew they're out of money and they needed help. And so I came in and raised money for them, and then became the CEO of the company. It was doing about $20,000 a month when they came into my life. And then when we exited, we were doing about $65 million a month.
Wow. So 20,000 a month to 65 million. I have so many questions. So, I mean, first off, right? You had already built a successful business that was doing a few $100,000 a month. You had this exit. Now I know you were broke after blowing it, but like, to me, it doesn't on the surface seem like this great opportunity. Like, these guys are coming to you out of money. They're only doing 20 grand a month. Like, you're not a supplements guy. Like, you don't have experience in that space.
Yeah.
You could have just did another computer thing. So like, why? What made you so interested in this particular opportunity? When
I believe I have full responsibility over this. I believe my soul was called to reduce the amount of opportunities I could have so I could say yes to this.
This is the only opportunity.
Yeah. So when I have no other opportunities, I say yes to any opportunity, right?
Got it.
And I had positioned myself in such a way to where my opportunities were limited. And so when it showed up, I took advantage of it and I went all in on it. Sometimes having too many opportunities is the biggest problem that people face.
Well, yeah, and that's what I'm getting at, because we live in a world today where I see young people all the time. I mean, you were still in your mid-20s at this point, but young people all the time, especially those in their 20s, are like, dude, I don't know, man. There's so many things I keep seeing about on YouTube and TikTok and Instagram. I don't know if I should be in real estate or if I should do, some tech thing, or if I should try to do some social media content, or if I should, do e-commerce, or if I should do this thing. And it's just like, basically they get inundated with so much opportunity, they do nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. And it doesn't really matter what you do, as long as you go all in and you want to build it in a scalable way. There's certain things that you can do that'll take the life from you. But if you're seeking to build something in a very scalable way and you're backing yourself and investing in yourself, you're not going to lose. You may not get to the mountaintop that you're seeking, but you're going to get some skills and some character along the way to then get to that mountaintop later.
Yeah. So these guys came to you with an opportunity. You just jumped on board, started using the skills that you had developed.
Yeah.
And I mean, what was the journey like? Because I mean, obviously you guys didn't get to 65 million off the bat. How long from that point to 65 million?
Well, it was in an industry that I didn't know. So I had a steep learning curve.
Yeah.
I had to learn a lot about the industry. I had to learn a lot about supply chain, about their Salesforce methodologies. Now, I was lucky that I had two co-founders that were brilliant individuals. They were very capable, very good. And, we would make decisions and one would go execute, the other would go execute, and I go execute, and we'd come back together. And that's a rare thing to have three very young, hungry, intelligent, driven people that are equally yoked, seeking to execute at all times. So I was very lucky to have that. My primary role was in corporate, setting up the corporate side of it, the finance side of it, raising the capital for it, building out the team and the infrastructure to support it. They were pretty knowledgeable on the sales and marketing side. And so, we basically came together and built some great things as a result of that.
Yeah. So how long did it take?
Well, we had a number of ups and downs. So like year one, we did like 2 million, then we came back down and then we went up. And then in 2008, we got some momentum. We got to about 2.5 million a month. We're doing about $500,000 a month in profit. And then we signed an agreement to sell the company to a publicly traded company on the NYSE called Blythe. And it was a multi-year earnout. And it was only doing $500,000 in EBITDA. It was 8 times EBITDA, but it was back and loaded at the end of the earnout.
500 EBITDA a month or a year?
It was 500 a month at that time.
Yeah.
But when the 2008 recession hit, that fell apart.
Yeah.
The publicly traded company wrote it down to zero. We had to put the money they gave us back into it to keep it alive.
Yep.
And it was quite a struggle. So 2008 recession humbled me. But then
how many years were you into that company at that point?
Well, I bought it in 2005. So about 3 years, we got it in a position where I got it sold. And then we had to go back to work in 2008, basically 2009. I equate it to taking the car off the track, rebuilding the engine completely. And then we got it back on the track and it ran faster than ever.
Okay. And then at what point did it get to that 65?
2012.
Okay. So this all scaled super fast. I mean, even in the grand scheme of things, we're talking 7 years.
Yeah, 7 years.
Lots of ups and downs.
Yeah,
but
2009 we did 2009 we did 9 million. 2010 we did 39 million. 11.
These are all per month.
Yeah, no, per year. 9 million in 2009.
Okay.
36 million in 2010, 231 million in 2011, 635 million in 2012.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that was a ride.
And what were the profit margins on those?
We did 100 million in EBITDA in 2012, and that was the basis for the acquisition.
Wow. So with all that, right? Let's just go back to you join, you guys are doing 20K a month.
Yeah.
What was like all the first orders of business for doing this? Because I mean, like when I look at it, I actually just met a guy 2 weeks ago who's got a company, and I'm probably going to have him on the show, but they do protein powders. Yeah. They do everything. They're in Target. They're in like all this stuff. And they're trying to get their way up to 100 million a year. And they're on the way. And you know, he's just talking about the growing pains, but also he was telling me about the supply chain issues as being the main issue. Like they're pretty good at sales and marketing, but like trying to get that much protein and forecasting like a year in advance, because you can't just like all of a sudden grow protein tomorrow. Yeah. It's not like a digital product where you just create it. It's like it actually takes time to harvest and all that. So I'm just curious, like, what each year was like building that.
So I have a master's degree in supply chain.
Yeah, because that's the hardest part, I would think.
Yeah. So after you get your customer acquisition engine really ramped, then everything else breaks, right? So when you figure out that piece of the puzzle, then you have to have the aptitude to go figure out all the other pieces of the puzzle. This is technology, supply chain, finance, cash flow. Like there's a lot to figure out once you get your customer acquisition engine dialed in.
Well, let's talk about customer acquisition, then we'll talk about that. So what did you guys do differently?
On the customer acquisition?
Yeah.
There was a couple of things. One, our consumer messaging was around saving money in the grocery store. And this was in the 2009 recession. So people were very much open to saving money. So that was our messaging, is take our meals, meal replacements, save money in the grocery store. We had other incentives too. If you enrolled 3 people on your challenge. So our big innovation was we were early pioneers in this concept called challenge marketing, which you're very familiar with now on social media. We were the first to take a challenge and put it on social media. And then we marshaled thousands of people to promote the challenge.
All on social media?
All on social media. No one was doing this in 2009.
How cheap were these clicks back then?
No one knew how to monetize. Social media wasn't even a commercial endeavor in 2009. Facebook had yet to even figure out their ad algorithm in 2009. So we had hundreds of thousands of people promoting a challenge in 2009 on social media. And that was the entire advertising strategy was word of mouth social media.
So we're not even talking Facebook ads or anything.
No paid media whatsoever.
Just all organic word of mouth.
Yeah, organic word of mouth. And then we would incent customers. If you got 3 people to join your challenge, we would give you your product for free.
Got it.
So if I wanted to lose 10 pounds and I got my wife to do it and my kid to do it, I would get product for free. And so we had a customer referral system that was a big driver of the business.
Did you have anyone that was like experienced with network marketing?
Oh yeah. My 2 co-founders were very experienced in the industry, and we built out a multi-tiered commission structure. And, we were in the direct sales industry. So I know that industry extremely well. And I built software and tools for the direct sales industry as well.
Okay. So That's kind of where you guys learned customer acquisition, network marketing backgrounds.
Yeah, but network marketing, where most network marketing companies are opportunity centric, we were customer centric. So it was about customer acquisition for us.
So would you say that at your guys' core, it was a network marketing company?
It would have been considered a network marketing company for sure.
Yeah.
Based on, if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck and acts like a duck. But we led with the challenge. We didn't do any of the network marketing standard tactics and practices of that time. Now, many of those tactics have been adapted by modern day network marketing.
At that time, they weren't
No,
normal.
Customer acquisition wasn't normal. And then we loved this idea of being on a challenge and being fit and being active and being healthy. And so we were just, selling a product and a challenge that we loved basically. And so it was a different sales model and a different customer acquisition model.
And you guys were giving them protein and like all that
meals,
stuff.
drinks, snacks, supplements, energy drinks, vitamins, that type of stuff.
Got it. So you guys do that. It just keeps exploding. Like, I guess, so I've never really done network marketing and I've never really leaned on like affiliates or anything.
Yeah.
I've always just been direct, straight to the consumer, just relying on our own marketing. But I got to imagine that like part of why you guys grew so fast was just the compound effect of that.
Yeah, there are some very positive attributes to the direct selling model. There are also some very negative attributes. So while, I looked at it as a businessman, I said, these things catch on fire. Like, this is the fastest growing industry you could be a part of. This is fantastic. But there's equal and opposite negative aspects of the business models as well. Heavily competitive, people rating you, people stealing your team members, stealing your customers. You have millions of people that want your business and are trying to take it. I now am a much bigger fan of paid media and paid media's approach to marketing rather than network marketing because, of what I've learned about paid media now in my current journey. Versus, say, starting another network marketing model.
But back then, they're like the paid media side of, say, social media didn't really exist.
Wasn't there? No. But there's still, I know people in the industry, so I don't want to discredit it. What I don't like about the industry today, or back in the days, it's been a while since I've been in it, is that it taught you how to monetize your relationships. Now that I'm a little older and I'm more faith-driven, my relationships are my most coveted asset. I'm not seeking to monetize them. I'm seeking to do community with them and connect with them and create, life with people, not necessarily figure out a way that I can monetize my mom and my dad and my grandma and make money, from the people in my social network.
Got it. Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah. And I mean, to me, I've had, what's so funny? Because you said you're 46.
Yeah, 47.
47. So I've had lots of guys who, let's just call it 45 to 60 years old, that bucket. It's like everybody was in network marketing, like in that age range.
Yeah.
Like that was the way to like become rich and be an entrepreneur. And it makes sense because I think that, right, social media didn't exist. Like there wasn't like all these opportunities out there like there are today. Like I think that when I'm 50, so 15 years from now, people are going to be like, bro, like everyone your age was, all these 50-year-olds, they were just doing social media and making YouTubes and reels and all this stuff. Like we don't do that anymore. We do whatever the thing is.
Could be, the network marketing model has not evolved to the rate of, say, social media and paid advertising, because just think about the intellectual and capital behind social media and paid advertising versus that of network marketing. So network marketing was not very innovative. Technologically, that industry could have evolved much faster than it did. I wanted to be an evolutionary force in the industry, and I certainly did. I brought it into the mobile age with various innovations, innovated on the business model. But I think that paid media and social media has a bigger runway because of the amount of innovation occurring within the industry, just based on the pure capital behind it.
What kind of innovation do you see
within social media?
Yeah.
Well, I'm investing heavily in AI related innovations right now. I definitely think that the world is going to change dramatically over the next 5-10 years. So, and I'm investing aggressively, hiring PhDs, engineers, scientists, to build in this direction.
Got it. Okay. So you guys are basically getting customer acquisition down because you guys are just doing these challenges, word of mouth. It's just compounding as more people keep building their downlines and all this stuff. So then you said that leads to more issues.
Yeah.
So now what were the next issues to solve?
Well, you mentioned supply chain. As I'm expanding into Canada, all of a sudden my call center starts blowing up. I had about 500 people in my call center.
Were they remote or Americans? Or were they?
No, it was all, I had offices in Detroit, Amsterdam. I had one in Germany, London, and Los Angeles.
Wow.
Yeah. And
why so many? Just because you were operating in all those places?
Oh, yeah. We're in about 27 countries.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was multinational, flying on a private jet, living the life. Call center starts blowing up. And the biggest mistake that I've ever made economically in my career, other than some opportunities I didn't take advantage of that were worth billions, was a supply chain error that cost us $25 million in cash. Wow. About $50 million worth of retail product I had to throw into a dumpster.
What happened?
Because they got an ingredient wrong.
Wow.
It was a QA process, quality control, quality assurance process that failed. And I learned this the hard way. And I now have religion around supply chain. But yeah, it was supply chain. And I remember sitting there thinking, like, I just lit a fire to $25 million in cash, like a bonfire. No benefit to it. Take the stuff out of our warehouses and send it to the
you couldn't like sell it for discount?
Couldn't even donate it to children in Africa. It was so bad.
Wow. Yeah. That's insane.
Yeah. $25 million worth of packaged shake, protein shake getting sent to a landfill. And that's our cash cost.
It's missing the protein.
Yeah. It was the subtlest. It was an ingredient that they just got wrong. One little detail on the ingredient, and one version of the ingredient is very good in high temperatures, and another version of the ingredient smells like sour milk in high temperatures. And when you put this thing in non-refrigerated trucks and ship it all around the United States and Canada, it starts to smell like sour milk, basically. And it was just one little...
Where was the mistake? Like, who made it? How could it have been avoided?
It was a person, without naming names, it was a person within my product organization that had been with me for a long time that missed it because we were growing too fast. I was pushing too hard, and we compromised on quality to get the product shipped.
Got it. Just moving super fast.
And, running people too hard, running them to the ground, and you make a lot more mistakes when you run that way.
So supply chain, I mean, even talk to me about supply chain. Like, how hard was it getting vendors? I mean, we're looking at it today with Trump and tariffs and all this stuff. Like, I can't imagine everybody's supply chains are getting wrecked now.
Right now, people are getting wrecked. Yeah. I mentor many businesses. On one side of the people that I support, they're happy because they make their products in America. Yeah. On the other side, the people I support, they're very unhappy because they've imported. And, I was at dinner this weekend with one individual, and his product was taxed 25%. And I made the mistake. I said, so you're raising your prices by 25%? And he said, no, I have to raise my prices by 60% to maintain his margin rates.
Yep.
So imagine you're selling a product and now you got to raise the price by 60% overnight. That's catastrophic for business.
You're going to lose a lot of customers.
Yeah. And so, a lot of people were smart enough to pile up on inventory prior to this change, but those who are not are really suffering right now.
How do you see it playing out?
We'll see. Trump's very volatile. Anybody who thinks they can predict exactly how he's going to act is crazy. I think that's what makes him great, is that he's unpredictable. I'm not in the business of predicting whether or not how these things are going to play out.
Yeah.
Last time he went deep on a trade war against China, we got COVID. So I'm hoping that we don't get COVID again, or the next version of COVID with the next trade war.
I didn't even think about that. Yeah, like, that's their response to the trade war.
It could be.
Yeah. I've never heard anyone say that. That's interesting. I just saw Trudeau, or whatever his name is, just step down. Yeah. And that's got to be trade war related. They don't like those tariffs.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he wasn't he
wasn't liked anyways.
No, there's a shift away from extreme liberalism, and there's a shift away from it. Whether you're on the left or right, we can all acknowledge that there's a shift away from it. And he was, part of the extreme.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you would have so much perspective on all these international affairs, being 27 markets or countries and all that. Like, as a guy who doesn't really worry too much about it, I'm like, whatever. I mean, yeah, tariffs might affect real estate. That definitely doesn't affect digital products and goods. Yeah. What is your perspective on where everything's headed right now?
Well, I'm America first. I'm a patriot. I want to see our budget cut. I want to see our deficit cut. We're going to have to go through some hard times to do it. I believe we will be heading toward a debt crisis in the next few years. And I think God has called Elon Musk and Trump to get in there and tear this thing apart to preserve our great country. And I think that that's going to come at a cost to a lot of people. Others, some will fall down in this time. Others will build up. And that's just the price you pay. And so I think you have to stay in a neutral position. You have to look at the marketplace, see how things are changing, and then, choose your entry points.
Yeah, I've always thought about that too. It's like usually when a company leans out or whatever, it's for good purpose. It's to get ready for the next stage and cut the fat and whatever. And it's like, Elon's coming into this thing, having done this a bunch with many companies. And he's like, dude, we're just wasting so much money. I don't even know how he has time to do it all, but like, I don't know. It's just going to be so crazy to see. And then you just see all these people who are mad about it. And it's like, I get it. You're talking about your job or your business is going to lose because you're not an efficient part of the economy.
Yeah, I've been.
You're the fat.
I've been in some of his environments, and they're highly productive environments. Most corporations, which are much more productive than government, are only running at about 50% productivity. So if you look at any company, you drive down, average productivity levels are at 50% of capacity. Nobody's really running at 85, 90% of their human capacity, period, because people are just hard to organize. They're hard to keep disciplined. They're hard to centralize and prioritize. And he has figured out ways to keep people highly productive and highly efficient. So just knowing that, you could go into government and say, cut 75% of this stuff out and it'll be just fine.
Right. So you did with Twitter.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and he proved with Twitter, of course, that, that you can run at a much leaner level. Most companies, when you factor in absenteeism, turnover, lack of productivity, lack of communication, and all of these core competencies that companies need to have strong skills in to be highly productive, 50% of every company is wasting, 100% of every company out there is wasting 50% of its time on average. There are some outliers that are highly productive, but those are rare.
Yeah. So you're basically saying every time I have to now hire somebody because of turnover, that's an inefficiency.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and unless it's involuntary, meaning you've decided to bring in somebody more efficient, right?
Oh yeah.
But if it's involuntary, if it's voluntary turnover, or they're quitting because A players despise being in B and C player environments. Yeah. So I mentor lots of companies with hundreds of employees. And I can tell you most of the problems that companies face, and they all face them, no matter who you are, you got your problems. I got mine, you got yours. Yeah. We all have them. Every single one of these companies is not operating at their full capacity by any means. Everybody falls short of, full capacity. Elon, though, has a different system. He keeps people very accountable. In his environments, you have to account for every 15 minutes of your time. Yeah. Right. So, they pull one of your staff in and say, what have you done with the last 15 minutes? Yeah. And if you've gone 3 hours without being productive, you're not going to be a part of that environment. Yeah. What's funny is, and I say it, and I guess Elon does it pretty bluntly too, but I've asked this to just different employees. I'm like, so can you just share with me what you do all day? Yeah. And it's not like a mean thing. I'm just like, no, I'm just genuinely curious. Like just tell me, like, what do you do all day? Yeah. What happens here and there? And like, because it's just determining how much capacity that person has. Yeah. And it just makes me think like, would the best trait of a COO or even a CEO be the ability to just increase efficiency? Yes. The number one source of truth in all of our lives is our calendar. Yeah. So if you said, Ryan, give me some tips in optimization, I'd say, if you're honest and open, you'd hand me your calendar. Yep. And we go through it and we look at how you're spending your time and where you're spending your time. And we'd find opportunities for optimization, both personally and professionally, right? Yeah. There's always room for optimization in every season in all of our lives. Yeah. Now, a bad employee would not want you looking at their calendar, yeah. Right? A good employee would say, help me find a better way to optimize my time. And the calendar is the source of truth.
Real estate investors, I found a brand new way to create cash flow that's better than anything else I've ever done. It's better than rental properties, Airbnb, my flipping business, multifamily. It's the best thing we've done yet. It is building an automated wholesale business. Now you might be saying, Ryan, how do you build an automated wholesale business? Well, what if you had the same exact leads that I get every single month? What if you had a sales script that was so easy to close deals over the phone that you could do it all across the country? And what if you could sell your deals directly on the MLS without a real estate license and without having to actually own the property and getting top dollar? Well, we do that with this new method. And I made an 11-minute video where I go over how it all works, how you can start doing it today. So if you want to go see that video, go to wealthyinvestor.com, go click the case study and see what I'm talking about. Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like, if you find somebody who is not utilizing their time properly, it's like, yeah, I mean, they either need to take on more responsibility, or we got 3 employees doing one person's job. Or
you have, and that is the case. Most companies, they have the 80-20 rule where 80% of all the work is done by 20% of the people. That's generally the case. But to be highly optimized, you have to be able to get people.
You got to buck the 80-20 rule somehow.
You have to keep raising the lid of the 20% and keep dragging up the 80%. And the way you drag up those 80% are you cut the people that are non-performers, and you got to cut them quickly, and you bring on new people with new energy and new excitement about the opportunity, and you move them into new levels of productivity, and then you raise the ceiling that way.
Are you a believer? What was the guy's name? Jack Welch? Is that
about cutting 10% of the workforce?
Yeah.
You have to prune the tree frequently, yes.
How frequent?
I look at it every month. Wow. I look at my tree every month. I have a family environment that's in the business of a sports team. Yep. So we're a family, but we are here to win games. We're here to play the game of March and win. And if we don't win, and we don't win in a way that I'm impressed with this team, then I'm going to find new team members.
Yeah.
Right. Every month is a game. And every time we play the game, I'm looking at the team, and I'm keeping, I believe in people. I believe in developing them. But if we're not winning, I'm thinking about personnel changes. Yeah.
No, I'm with you. I always say that too about our company, is that, we are a team. And, I hate to say it this way, but it's like, family and team are different. Like you said, it's like family, I'm stuck with you regardless.
Yeah.
So like, I can't fire my mom. No. I can't, like, family is family. And so I'm going to love you either way. But like, business isn't like that.
No.
Like, it's like, no, we're a team. And I've played on teams my whole life, playing professional baseball. And I'm just like, look, we're here to win.
Yeah.
I don't think any of us want to lose.
Yeah.
And if somebody's not getting it done and they're the weak link on the team, well, guess what? We need to make a signing. We got to make a trade. Something's got to happen. And it's unfortunate, and it doesn't mean that I don't like you. I've had to let go of people I really like as humans and as people. And, sometimes we're still friends after, sometimes not. And it's like, it sucks, but that's the reality of running a business. Like, you cannot be okay with losing, because to your point, you lose all the A players. They don't want to be around that.
No. And losing is, as you know, in sports. I was mentored by a couple great coaches. Coach John Wooden of UCLA fame was a mentor of mine. He's no longer with us. And Coach Dale Brown. I've learned a lot about, running sports teams just based on their mentorship. And you want to be on a winning team. There's nothing, even as a CEO and owner of a company, if you are losing, everybody's morale is low. It's painful. It exacerbates all of the flaws and problems in a company. And when you're winning, it's exciting and fun. So your job is to make sure you're making the personnel changes, you're correcting people frequently, you're moving toward conflict, and you blow the whistle. When a player's not performing at their best, you pull them off the floor and you let them know that there's standards that they need to be playing toward and that you expect more of them. And you have to run your company like a sports team. Not like a family. As you said, a family is, and you know who makes the biggest mistakes at this, believe it or not? Kingdom building entrepreneurs.
I know.
Right? They can't fire anybody.
Well, that's why I don't fire people anymore. Yeah. I took it out of my hands because I can't do it.
I mentor
I want to see someone redeemed.
I mentor a CEO who called me and he said, the reason why I'm inviting you onto the board, it's a big company, is because it breaks my heart to let a person go. And I'll give you a framework that I've developed. My job is not to keep you from the wilderness. If you're supposed to go to the wilderness, that's between you and God.
Yeah.
And if I'm making a bad mistake by firing you, the marketplace is going to pick you up and pay you more.
Yeah, you
and
should have no problem getting a job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right? So it's my ego that keeps you here.
Yeah.
Because if you're supposed to go into the wilderness, that's between you and God, and you're going to come out stronger. But if I keep you here, I'm stopping you from the growth that God has planned for you. And if I'm wrong and the marketplace is going to reward you more, then let you go. And frankly, I've never been upset about a fire. I've never looked back and said, I should not have fired that person.
Yeah, I've never regretted it.
Never.
I've always regretted waiting too long.
Yeah. One of the things that I always look at is the delta between when my intuition knew and when I acted.
How long is that delta?
I want to close that gap. Well, it used to be 6 months. Now it's 60 days.
Okay. And it could still be even shorter.
I try to turn them around. Like I do everything I can. I'm
Performance
clear.
improvement plans, everything.
All that's pretty much nonsense. I pull them off the floor and I say, look, you are not meeting my expectations. And I have only a few decisions to make here with regard to our relationship together. And you're limiting my options. And I don't want that to be the case. If you want to change that, here's what you have to do.
Yeah.
Right. So resetting expectations, being very clear. And I tell them, here are the choices you are giving me based on the way you are performing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Give me better choices.
Yeah. Whenever I'm coaching people, that's what I'm like, look, they're firing themselves, but if they don't know that they're doing wrong or they don't know how to fix it or whatever else, then it's like, it's not really their fault unless you bring it to their attention.
No.
And it's like, hey, this is what has to happen. Like, yeah. And the hard part is when you've allowed it for so long and they think it's okay.
Yeah.
And now you're like, well, guess what? We have new standards now.
Yeah.
It's always hard.
Yeah. Well, and the way to introduce new standards, if you have tolerated it, is to be honest about it, to say, look, I want to invite higher standards in my life.
Yeah.
And I want you to be a part of that. And you have to lead from the front.
Yep.
You can't, I can't say like, hey, I want you to show up to the office, but I don't show up to the office. I see so many people complaining about remote and hybrid workforces where the CEO's in his vacation property complaining about his remote and hybrid workforce. If you want something, you got to lead from the front. You got to do it first and then ask your team to follow your lead.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. I mean, we had John Maxwell here a few months ago.
He's a mentor of mine.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he talks about the law of the lid.
Yeah.
And he's just like, yeah, I mean, dude, you can only hire up to you.
Yeah.
So if you don't show up for work, in person, why would anyone else?
Yeah. Or a lot of CEOs I work with, they want sales and they think they're going to hire a sales manager and a sales team and sales are just going to magically happen. I say, no, go do sales, go be an SDR.
Yeah.
And then go be an AE and then go be a sales manager and then replace yourself with a sales manager to run the process that you've created. And the reason why is most people cannot create a process and run one. It's very few of us that can actually create a process that's effective and run it. So as a founder, you got to be the person out there on the front lines leading from the front.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Especially early on.
Oh, for sure. You don't have the capital or anything elsewise to do it.
Or even if you have the capital, say you raise capital from BC, then you go hire some, person that worked in corporate America thinking that they're going to somehow figure out this process. It's not going to happen.
That's what I learned with marketing. I remember we'd hire all these agencies and stuff and it would never work. And I'm just like, I am so tired of this. I'm going to learn it. I'm going to learn how to build every funnel, run every ad. I'm going to know every process of just from start to finish. I'm going to know the cost per click, the click-through rate, the upsell takes. I'm going to know every part of the thing. Yeah. And like, I'd like to say I'm now pretty good. And I'm like, yeah, there's no way an agency would have did that for me.
No. Well, and one of the mistakes you make after you have a big exit like I did is your ego's at a place and you think, I'll just hire people.
I can't, I'm too big
I'm not going to
this.
do sales anymore. I'm going to hire people to do sales. And you have some capital to deploy. So, I made that mistake for a couple of years until I got the religion that you just described that you got, which is like, I'm going to be on the call talking about the funnels. I'm going to be on the call with the ads people. I'm going to be on every one of these things until I get to a degree of competency that I can
actually go train a process on.
Yeah.
Because I know it.
Yeah. And I could get people to replace myself in that process. But yeah, I stumbled around for about 2 years after I exited at AlterCall, my present company, thinking I could just hire and pay good money to people, buy this person for 20 grand a month, buy that person for 30 grand a month. They should be able to solve this problem. And they
doesn't work.
Yeah,
so it just never works.
It was good money after bad money until I said, I'm going to figure this out.
Yeah, that's funny. So to go back to kind of the timeline of all this, right? You're fixing supply chain issues. You lit 25 million on fire from that. I mean, at what point did things finally get better? Because you said that you had like this mini exit that ended up having to go back into the company.
Yeah.
Because you guys got hit with the recession like everyone else.
Yeah.
And then you went back to rebuilding better than ever. Like, what changed?
I mean, everything is a God thing now. I can clearly see the divinity of our creator's craftsmanship, and people showing up at the right time at the right place, and getting the right message, and knowing with full confidence that this will work and this will scale when others didn't believe. I had everybody tell me challenges were done. They were dumb. EAS had a challenge. Other people have had challenges. Your challenge isn't going to work. I had a lot of people tell me what I was doing wasn't going to work. So I truly believe that this was part of my soul's journey. And this was part of the curriculum that I had to learn. And this was part of my destiny, truly. Now, some of the things that I got right, I got the messaging right. I got the unit economics right. I got the business model right. I then had to get supply chain right and some of the other scalable aspects and technology and infrastructure. And that all happened because the right human beings showed up into my life to do the jobs I needed them to do. I would have never been able to have any of the numbers that I've shared with you if it were not for highly competent, very talented people that were on my team.
And they just showed up like, at the right opportunity. We need a supply chain expert.
I need a CTO. Next thing you know, I'm talking to the former CTO of Disney.
Yeah.
And, and I'm like, so one of the things that, I do have to tell you, I give credit to my venture capital partners early on. They always insisted that I aim super high. So I was aiming to hire people that were making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year when I was only making 75 as a founder.
Okay.
I was always trying to call in the best of the best talent, people that were far better than me. So I've never, I've never had a problem of hiring great people to do the jobs that were necessary to be done.
Yeah. One thing I've heard, and I even experienced it a little, is like when you do hire some of these people that come from massive companies, sometimes they don't know how to adjust to the startup mentality, right? So how do you find the right person who's not so far above where I guess you're currently at?
Yeah. Number one is I tell the person that I'm going to micromanage you for 90 days. And I'm going to be calling you 7 days a week. I'm going to text you at 4 a.m. when I wake up, and I'm going to be all over you on everything you do until I transfer my decision process onto you. After I'm comfortable that you will make the same decisions that I will, then I will pull back and I'll go work on other problems in the company. But my mission is to onboard you in such a way that I have confidence that you will make the same decisions that I would. Most executives will say hell no to that invitation. Yeah. The one who says, yes, I want to run, that's the person I hire.
That makes sense.
Yep.
So you end up hiring a bunch of people. You guys just start growing. You get the right people in the right seats and everything else. And you have this new exit in 2012.
Yeah. So we're going to go public.
Okay.
So the company that acquired us ended up owing us more than their market cap. And our company became the number one indicator of that company's market cap. So I was running a publicly traded division that was the number one in profit, number one in revenue of a holding company on the NYSE. So I all of a sudden was the CEO of a publicly traded company. And I was the most important employee and the highest paid employee of that company during that time. So, just to give you an idea of the journey.
Yeah, how did that work, by the way? Because so in 2008 you sold.
Yeah.
And then you became public. You just became a part of this.
Well, I became part of the publicly traded company. They consolidated our financials. Then they wrote us off to zero. So I was still on their financial reporting. And then when the company blew up, now all of a sudden this became a meaningful part of their revenue and of their profitability.
Because before it wasn't.
It was zero. They didn't even have to report on. There was like a line item that says,
all of a sudden,
Visalis is worthless. It's still worthless.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden Visalis is, very valuable, and it's possibly even more valuable. Then the street picked up on it, and the stock ran from like $100 million market cap to an $800 million market cap because of my division.
And then all of a sudden you became the CEO of the holding company, or
no? I was the CEO of the largest division of the company, not the holding company. But I was, working with the board of the holding company. I was an executive in the holding company. I was considered a corporate executive of that company, but I wasn't a CEO of the holding company.
But clearly,
the holding company's job was just simply to roll up the financials and to oversee the SEC filings.
Yeah.
Our jobs as the operating division was really the most important jobs within those companies.
But you guys were with the holding company like they're like, man, you guys are really all that matters right now.
We were the most important, and
Yeah.
I became the third largest shareholder of the holding company because as I started liquidating, I started buying stock in the holding company.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah.
So wait, you liquidated, but if you already had shares, how did that
Dividends.
work?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we were throwing off so much cash that we would issue dividends.
And then with your dividends, you would then buy more shares.
Yeah.
Because you just believed in it.
Yeah. Well, they had a structured earnout. So they had to buy like 15% year one, and then they bought 15% year two. So there was some cash that came that way. And then there was cash that came via dividends as well.
Okay. So yeah, explain how that works too. So you guys found this company, and before you sold to them, clearly you guys owned it, you and your co-founders. So you could take cash whenever you guys all decided you wanted to, right?
No, well, we brought in a private equity partner pretty early in that company. So we had to run it in a very fiscally sound way. We weren't running it like a piggy bank.
Let's talk about that, because I run my companies like a piggy bank because I'm a 100% owner, and like I haven't had to raise capital or anything. So like, it's great.
Good for you, by the way. Good for you.
So, but my question is, okay, so when you bring in, this is a great thing for people to think about listening to this. When you bring in capital partners early, at that point, you treat it like essentially you're just getting your salary of whatever you agree on, and then you're not really balling out because you're responsible to these guys.
Yeah. Well, if the objective is to exit the company or to one day go public, which were our objectives since day one, and that was always my objective as a young entrepreneur. And even to this day, there's three ways to exit. There's dividends, there's strategic capital of some sort, whether it be minority or majority, and then there's going public, right? Those are the ways that we exit. So if you have an exit in mind, and you work with a capital provider, they're going to require you to be audited by, say, a Big Five, and they're going to require that you have strong governance, and they're even going to put expense provisions in your charter so that you can't run your company you can't throw the house in there, the car in there, other things like that. And those are negotiated in the contracts in any private equity or venture capital transaction that's done by a reputable firm.
Okay. So you guys raised capital, and that was before the 2008 deal, right?
We signed August 4th, 2008.
Oh, so that was when you first got capital.
Yeah.
So before 2008, you were doing whatever.
No, we raised about $1.5 million before 2008. And then we sold the company in a multi-year earnout in 2008.
Yeah. So you're just making a salary and dividends at that point.
Salary and dividends, yeah.
And then you have this bigger exit when you guys are worth something again for the holdco.
Yeah.
And so would you say that, at what point did you feel like you were actually making good money? Because it seems like so much of your money is tied up in the company.
The one thing that I'll tell you, unlike cash businesses, when you're an equity builder, you have to suspend belief, and you have to believe that you're building equity value at all times. I look at the value of equity that I'm building in my companies, not the cash that I'm taking out of it.
Yeah.
It's different. Real estate's different. You do have an equity component that you have to speculate as to what's the appreciation of the asset going to be like over time and how are you going to tap that. But in equity building, for the sake of equity building, you have to really believe in the value of the equity that you're building.
Yeah.
And I always believed in the value of the equity that I was building. So I was cash poor, but I was paper rich at all times.
And that's what I'm saying, because a lot of people don't realize that. They see these companies and these founders, and they're like, oh, his net worth's $100 million. And it's like, dude, he's still slumming it.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah. Some of the unicorns that we hear, right? $2 billion valuation, $20 billion valuation, their VCs won't allow them to take any more than a $250,000 a year salary, and they're starving. They're living on $250.
Yep.
They got to pay their taxes, take care of their kids with that.
Yeah.
And they're working 18 hours a day, 6 days a week.
Reminds me of being in the minor leagues when we'd make no money. Now, granted, it wasn't even $250K a year. It was literally, $1,200 a month.
Yeah.
So that was literal starving. But this even reminds me of man, dude, that's crazy that you have all this on paper value and they can't give you just a little bit more. Do you think it just keeps them hungry?
Well, there's certain conditions that I've helped negotiate on behalf of founders that are working with VCs to take some chips off the table.
Yeah.
Because we don't want the founder to be fear-driven. We don't want them to be in pain and worried and constant fear and agony and strife within their family.
Yeah.
But we want to keep them hungry. So there's a certain level of, I want you as hungry as possible, but I don't want you and the wife fighting about taking care of the child or meeting your health needs. So we want them to be as hungry. So oftentimes we'll negotiate a loan on behalf of the company. We'll negotiate some chips off the table in the transaction to keep them, to keep them from being too fear driven.
Yeah.
So there's a dilemma there, but you don't want them too rich to where they start building houses and they start vacationing.
Yeah.
And
Bro,
now
why you got a second home?
Now you paid them to leave the company basically before the company is sellable.
Yeah.
There's a different. There's two different types.
Living comfortably versus being rich.
Yeah.
Essentially.
And I have a friend who took a tremendous amount of capital off the table through his fundraising, and it did distract him. This happened. So a company may be worth $100 million to investors, but that doesn't mean that anyone will come in and buy it for $100 million. So the investment value and valuation is different than the acquisition valuation. It's important for people to understand that. Just because you have a company doing $100 million in revenue that could be even throwing off $10 million in profit doesn't mean anybody's paying you 10 times EBITDA because of the way the business is ran, the way the business is structured, and the volatility of the company.
So, man, I have so many questions now. With that, right? We're now saying that, okay, this company normally trades 10x EBITDA, right? So it should be valued at $100 million. But you're like, well, sometimes if they have all the other boxes checked, and what would cause a company to not?
So volatility is the main item that you're discounting for.
Okay.
Right. So when I was going public, I was doing 100 million EBITDA. Valuations ranged from like $1 billion to $1.5 billion in the publicly traded markets. And we were, working with Jefferies, and we filed our IPO paperwork, and we were doing the roadshow, and that was the multiples. At the same time, Facebook was going public, and I was working with the same bankers, and I was talking to them, and they were doing also 100 million in EBITDA, but they were worth $100 billion.
You're like,
yeah, that's when I realized I'm in the most volatile, unscalable model, and I'll never build that way again, because there's no way that Mark is doing 99 billion times the amount of work that I am. But yet he's earning 99 billion times more value than for the same amount of EBITDA. And so I was like, I'm in the wrong industry. I'm in an unscalable industry here.
Yeah, because they're basically like, dude, you got so much you got to do to get all this protein powder, this marketing.
People can steal your customers.
Yeah, Mark
brands
is just
are competing with you.
Mark has no competitor.
Yeah,
he's Facebook.
It's infinitely scalable. He just hires engineers to scale. I got open offices all around the world.
It's just your business is way harder to run.
Yeah, way harder to run.
More volatile. Yeah. You could lose everyone quickly. Yeah. But that's not going to happen with him. Yeah.
And that was a lesson that I learned in scalability and volatility, basically, that, his multiples, and he deserved it, of course. His $100 billion IPO went to a $2 trillion or whatever they're at today.
Yeah, it's done pretty good.
So, it was correct.
Yeah. And I mean, even with that, right? You talked about you guys ended up going public, but you were technically already public.
No, we sold to the publicly traded company. They were going to spin us off to raise the funds to complete the acquisition. And then the public markets came down in our sector because Bill Ackman started attacking a company called Herbalife.
Yep.
And when Ackman went after Herbalife, the sector depressed, and then my buyout provision kicked in because my multiples were higher in the buyout than they would have been in the public market multiples at that time. So we canceled the IPO the day of the roadshow and then proceeded with the buyout.
But I guess my question is, you guys were already technically, wouldn't you be considered public since you're part of the public holdco?
I was complying with Sarbanes-Oxley's. I was signing off on financial paperwork that I go to jail in the event that these numbers are off. So I was running a publicly traded company for all intents and purposes. I just didn't have my own ticker.
Right. So that was just to basically
separate. I was a tracking stock, if you think about it that way.
It'd be like if Instagram were to go public out of Facebook today.
No, well, it's harder for them to value Instagram's, this was easy for them to value us in the publicly traded company. It'd be more like when Yahoo used to own Alibaba, they would just look at Alibaba's publicly traded price and they would track Yahoo stock that way. so more of a conglomerate concept rather than a division concept.
Got it. Okay. So that ends up getting valued because it would have been less publicly because Ackman was attacking Herbalife.
Ackman went after them with a holy war that depressed our entire industry, cut everybody in half.
What was he mad about?
What he lost his tail, and the largest loss he's ever lost was because of that war. His position didn't understand the benefits of this industry and
network marketing.
Yeah, it provides value to people. And his assumption from his ivory tower was that everyone involved in this industry is being taken advantage of.
Yeah.
And he didn't realize not everybody has an opportunity to go to college. Not everybody has an opportunity to start a business. Not everybody lives in Wall Street or has commanded the English language. And so network marketing is a great opportunity for those people that want to learn the foundations and fundamentals of sales and marketing as it relates to entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Right now,
you don't have to create a product. You have your product right here.
And you get to learn some fundamentals in business. Just like buying a franchise in real estate is a great opportunity for people to learn some things. So from his ivory tower, he could not see that. But Carl Icahn could, and Carl Icahn, killed him in that transaction. He basically went after him and supported Herbalife, and Ackman lost billions on that trade.
And Icahn he's the guy who just kind of takes over companies, right?
Icahn's a corporate raider and or whatever they call him, but basically, yeah.
Okay. So you end up getting this buyout for $792 million. And you had founders and everything. So at the end of the day, how did that end up playing out for everyone?
Well, we did quite well. We did the buyout, and then we bought it back shortly after the buyout. And then we sold it again not too long ago. In 2020, it sold again. But
in 2012, was that just you guys just got $792 million cash, or how'd that play out?
Well, we had other shareholders as well. I gave $25 million to my team.
Yep.
And wrote a lot of multi-million-dollar checks to a lot of people.
Yep.
We, of course, each of us, there's 4 of us that owned nearly an equal share. So you divide that by 4 by taxes, gave $25 million to the team. So we did, we all did quite well.
Yeah.
And then we stayed on with long-term employment contracts with the publicly traded company. And then I ran it. I was the CEO until 2016.
And then you bought it back.
Then we bought it back.
What year was that?
I think 2015 we bought it back.
Why did you guys have to buy it back? They just ran it to the ground, or what?
There was some, there was an element of that. We lost our soul, though. Truth is, when you get a bunch of young people tremendously rich very early on, and we had people making many millions of dollars in our field.
You were like, what,
34, 35,
yeah, you're my age.
Hundreds of millions in cash.
Yeah.
People on my team, that went from making $5,000 a month to making $300,000 a month.
Oh, sheesh.
Yeah. Everyone around us was just filthy rich. And I say the word filthy because that's the way we were acting and conducting ourselves. We were not operating with biblical principles, kingdom values, nor I certainly wasn't. And I take responsibility because, I was drinking and living like a rock star and partying like a rock star. And a lot of the people in my team and my field were emulating that lifestyle as well. We're building mansions.
It comes from the top down.
From the top down, I take full responsibility for, my influence on that. And obviously, I've learned a lot from that. But, so we started making some big mistakes that were self-sabotaging. It was what I call it. Every entrepreneur has self-sabotaging tendencies and traits. Under what conditions will they hit them? And those were the conditions that were ripe for my self-sabotaging tendencies.
Just a lot of money.
A lot of money and some notoriety. I had a number 1 New York Times bestselling book. When you're in that industry, I was selling out stadiums.
Everyone knows who
I was a rock star. I walk into a stadium with 18,000 people in it, singing and chanted my name. I thought I was God's gift to humanity, and my ego got out of control. My vices got out of control, and I self-sabotaged.
Yeah. It seems like that's commonplace in network marketing.
It's commonplace in any
business that makes a lot of money.
any young man that comes from poverty and all of a sudden has $100 million plus net worth is going to have ego is undefeated, right? Ego always creeps in.
I guess I should say in anything that's like a very just high testosterone sales culture.
Yes. Ego's undefeated in any culture.
Yeah.
If you don't have the process to humble yourself and keep your ego at bay, as Matthew said in the Bible, he who praises himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be praised.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that technique, I don't care who you are or where you are, you will fall, and you will fall hard. You have to have a humbling process, whether that be spiritually or otherwise.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're going to fall.
Yep. So you're running this and you got a ton of money for the first time ever. And all of a sudden, it's just getting run into the ground, whatever. And then you have to buy it back. Like, how did that work?
We approached the people we owned it from. We said that had purchased it from us. We said we're unhappy because of some complicated transaction, some SEC rules and GAAP rules. They had to carry us at a massive debt on their books. So we negotiated for them to release the debt, and that we would take back the company and part ways as friends, basically. And it was a complicated negotiation. There were times where I didn't think it would work. There were times where I had to tell them that, it was going to happen this way, or we were going to walk. And in retrospect, we should have just walked and foreclosed on the publicly traded company. Instead, we took the company back because our egos got the best of us.
We could do it again.
We could do it 10 times, but our egos were big.
It reminds me of when Portnoy bought back Barstool for $1.
Yeah.
He sold it. Then a couple of years later, he just buys it back for $1.
It was a similar transaction, similar concept. But once again, ego has you believing that, that you're going to come back and do it twice as good. And that wasn't what happened, but it did end up selling, and it still lives on to this day. And one of my co-founders is the president of the final acquiring company and is doing quite well now.
Okay. So why do you think, you did sell it again in 2020. Why wasn't those 4 years a success?
Drugs and alcohol.
Just personally, it was just bad.
Yeah, I was just, my mother was in a coma for 2 years. She woke up and was severely handicapped for the remainder of her life. So every day I lived as though it was going to be her last. My son had autism, and it was severe early on. And then I had all of these different vices that were distracting me from the pain that I was in and from addressing that pain. So I would take full responsibility for the fact that those 4 years were very painful years by way of some external circumstances and then some internal circumstances that were occurring at that time.
How much do you think your personal life affects your business?
It's 9,000. Your business is 0. Your personal life is 100%.
Yeah.
Your company is a reflection of who you are.
Right.
Your company is an external game that you're playing that is there to show you where to increase your competency and to galvanize your character. And it's basically a reflection of who you are internally.
Yeah.
And your external mirrors your internal.
Yeah. It's like people somehow, and I hear this in your story, that they just think that somehow they can just press off their personal issues, their marriage, the drugs, their health, their faith.
Yeah.
And I can kind of compartmentalize that and just focus on the business. And I've always been like, dude, if your marriage is a wreck, that's going to bleed over into your business. If your health sucks, you can't even work.
Yeah.
If, your faith sucks, we know what that's like. You're just spiritually always going to be like, man, why do I feel this way? Why can't I ever be fulfilled? Why can't I ever be happy? This exit's not enough. This great month is not enough.
Yeah. Yeah. You're absolutely right on that. The success that we think we're going to get by way of distraction. What I always like to say is that the trauma that we have in our lives is a great fuel source, but eventually that fuel source becomes toxic. If you don't do the healing work on that trauma, if you don't actually figure out what's the roots of it and go back and reconcile and apply forgiveness and do the healing, you're going to end up having a toxic fuel source dominating your life.
Yeah.
And you can be successful in business, but it'll be built upon toxic fuel sources. Eventually, you're going to want to find a less toxic fuel
sustainable source.
Right? A more sustainable source of fuel in the building of your business.
Yeah.
So if you're totally ego driven and you're totally competitively driven, you can build for quite some period of time, but then eventually it'll feel toxic.
It'll get you. All right. So how did you end up getting into the spiritual side and really coming back to Jesus?
So my grandmother, who's no longer with us, she was devoted in her church, and she taught me to pray. She took me to church. I went to Sunday school, was baptized. She lived a devoted life to 99 years old. So I always had this foundation of purity as an idea, although I was living a very impure life.
Right.
So there was always a guilt around that. The way I knew what I was doing was wrong.
Yeah.
I knew I was sinning. And when my mom died, well, as she was dying, I went to her and I confessed. First of all, I got a prompting. It was October 19th, 2017. And I had been on Adderall. I'd been doing cocaine. I'd been drinking. And I got on my knees and I prayed to God to take this addiction away from me. I'd already sold my company. I'd had plenty of money to live on. And I was living this lifestyle that was rotting. And in that moment of prayer, and I was on my knees, I was crying, a voice came to me and said, "It's time to say goodbye to your mother." And she'd been fine. I was planning on Thanksgiving with her. And in that day, God took addiction off of my heart. I went and said goodbye to my mother, and she died just a couple of days later. And I knew that there was a God. I knew that God could intervene. It was the first time that I felt that there was proof of God in my life, because I was prompted to go tell my mother goodbye. And I prayed with her. I told her that on the other side, she's going to see some things. If she could see my character clearly, she would know that her son was not who she thought her son was, that I was struggling with things that she had no idea about, and that I needed her to die with grace and with peace, and that she could go knowing that I would be okay.
Yeah.
And that from the other side, she'd be my guide. She'd be my angel.
Yeah.
And that was the deal I made. And I told her that when she dies, I will become the leader I'm destined to be. Mm. And so that moment happened. She died. And then my whole life went to the greatest rock bottom you can imagine. Mm. It wasn't just like straight to the top from there. It was peeling away at every aspect of my character. Every sin became visible to me. Everything I'd done wrong, every instance I had to purify and heal and cleanse and repent for day in and day out for 2 years' time until I was ready to re-enter society. I went into a cave, and I'd been raised in the Bible, as you know, and as you have. And I remember hearing about how King David had to go reconcile with God in the cave. Yeah. My house became the cave, basically. And I spent 2 years in the cave.
What were you doing?
Praying, repenting, crying, begging for forgiveness, seeking to, I was broken. I got down to, I'm 195 pounds. I got down to 160 pounds. I isolated, and I was in terrible, terrible shape. But I made my whole life about my spirituality. I put God at the front of everything. I was facing $1 billion worth of lawsuits, class action lawsuits, and a bunch of other things that were occurring. I had a custody battle with my son's mother at that time. I had potentially being financially ruined. I had just tons of bad things happening in my life. And I said, the only way out of this mess is to go to God. That's it. There's no way that I could get out of the hole that I was in without help. And so I got help, and that was the beginning of my transformational journey. I awakened, is what I would say.
So obviously, like, it all started when you first prayed. You're like, God, you know what? Life's not going the way.
No, but it's a broken prayer. Yeah. What people don't understand is God hears you when you're broken. Yeah. Like, and you're just praying and you're running the ritual.
Close to the brokenhearted.
Oh,
what the Bible says.
I was broken. I couldn't see my son. My ego was destroyed. My identity was destroyed. Who I thought I was gone. That old Ryan Blair, I lit a fire to that man. That guy was gone. And now I had to pick myself up and figure out who I was. My skills were taken away from me. I lost the aptitude to do business, to do anything. It was all over. Like, I had no hope for the future. And I'd been an entrepreneur quite successfully, and everything was over. At least that's what I believed it was, but it was just the beginning of the new chapter.
And were you still working at all during this time?
No, I resigned from every board. I exited many investments. I quit responding to text messages or emails for anyone.
You just
disappeared. I walked away from millions in capital I'd given to people that, I'd invested in.
You're like, it's all good. I'm out.
It's just done. Light it all on fire. The old me's dead.
Wow. And during this time, you said you're facing $1 billion lawsuit.
Yeah.
All your money could be, taken
done
from you if you lose it. How did you get through that? Did you just come to finally this point where you were at peace, like with whatever would happen?
I had there's a lot of fear there. So there was never a time that I had fear, but I prayed and I prayed and I prayed. And my antidote to the fear was faith. And I just kept praying. And slowly, and I was blessed to have a good, a decent net worth and a good team around me. I had, money managers, and I had financial people that they knew I was going through hell. And, I had a business manager that was on the phone with the attorneys. And so there were people working behind the scenes on my behalf.
Yeah.
But the people were coming from my net worth everywhere that they possibly could. Attorneys, family members, everyone wanted a piece. So I just had enough of a team in place to keep them at bay, and enough faith to keep praying, and every step of the way, I would see the more that I would pray, the more that I would heal, the more my external reality would change. And I just kept, that was a simple pattern. And I just kept doing that and doing that, and I still continue to do that to this day.
So at what point did you feel it was time to exit the wilderness?
Well, you always think it's time to come out sooner than you should. And then you get sent back in. So, I thought I'd be healed up in a couple of weeks, be back to work.
I'm good.
Yeah. I was like, God, if we could just go ahead and get this process over with right away, I'll be back at it. And then you invest in something or you initiate something and you get detours and closed doors and it doesn't work. And that's an indicator that you still have more healing to do. Mm-hmm. What I like to say is you have an input ratio and an output ratio. In certain seasons, you have a higher input ratio necessary. That's the prayer, the meditation, the study, the scripture. And in other seasons, you have a higher output ratio. In that season, I was at a 99.9% input ratio and a near 0% output ratio.
Yeah.
Now, in this season, I'm at a 99% output ratio and a smaller input ratio. But in every season, you need to dial in your input-output ratio.
Okay. So you were really just kind of feeding yourself this time because you were at a massive deficit for years. And
my whole life, though, the gangs, the trauma, the way I was raised, all that was unreconciled. It had to be.
Yeah.
My mom died and it's time to clean that mess up of me.
So what was the catalyst for you finally coming out? Like, I mean, obviously God was working on you for 2 years. Was it like, oh, well, now I'm going to go back into the world. I'm going to go back and start seeing people and get back into business. What happened?
So I had this house, 7,000 square foot house. That's the cave in the Hollywood Hills. Not too bad of a cave.
Yeah.
Hiking trails, gym, basketball court in my living room, instruments. So I was having fun, right? I was playing instruments. I was having fun. But I was lonely. And I learned to be alone. And I thought maybe I need to move to an apartment somewhere and start dating again and, get back on my feet and start meeting people. Or get a roommate. But I was like, how do I get a roommate? How does this work? Right. I'm living in this strange cave.
You're like, who's the guy out here that did that? Dang. The guy who went crazy, the Hollywood actor who, that was the pilot aviator guy.
Oh, Howard Hughes. Hughes. I had a Howard Hughes moment for sure.
Yeah. That's what it reminds me of.
Yeah. But it was by outside looking in, you'd say this man has lost it. Yeah. And he's just, buried himself in a house. But what the outsiders didn't know is that I was in an intimate relationship with God every moment of every day that I possibly could be during that time. But I prayed, and then a friend of mine, an old friend, Gerard Adams, he's a person I invested in his company, Elite Daily, and helped him have an exit. He texted me and he said, I want to rent 2 of your rooms for myself and my videographer. And would you be open to? And I thought, I've been praying for a roommate or a change of scenery. And so he moved in, and basically, by the grace of God, a friend moved in. And I get emotional just telling you this. because with one good friend, you can do anything. All you need is one good friend.
Wow.
And he showed up, and he was a good friend.
Wow. And what'd you guys do?
We prayed. He was like, "What are you up to?" He wasn't nearly as spiritual as he is today.
Yeah.
So I brought him in. I started praying over him, praying over meals, talking about how everything I was going to do in my life was going to be spiritual from this point forward. We hiked, we prayed, and I started the altar call movement, from that moment with his help.
What year was that?
2019.
Okay.
I came out of the cave in 2019, started altar call, and then COVID hit shortly after, late 2019.
Yeah.
COVID hit, and I went back into the cave for 2 years.
Okay. So what do you guys do at Altar Call?
We mentor entrepreneurs that are kingdom-centric, faith-based people, and we help them build and scale their companies.
Okay.
So at the first phases of Altar Call, and you asked me how I came out, friends showed up, and then a couple students showed up asking me for help, and I realized that maybe my future is to mentor. My life had changed by the grace of God, installing a mentor in it. Maybe I'm supposed to be that mentor for others. And so that was the original premise, is that I'm just going to mentor. Now, I wasn't a coach. I didn't even like the idea of being a coach. Like this, yeah. I thought of myself as a technologist or something else. But I just humbled myself and started coaching and mentoring people. And, it first started with just random people trying to start businesses. And I was just telling them, no, don't do that. No, don't do this. and then now I've got a community of kingdom builders doing, billions a year in sales, and very vibrant community. And I had to learn how to coach a person at level 1. I had to learn how to empathize with a person that's suffering from addiction, as I used to be. And as I healed, I then had spiritual authority to help others heal. Yeah. And then as I gained in my spiritual authority, my skills started coming back. My old skills started showing back up. And then I started to being able to help people and being more effective. And now God has called me to serve great leaders. They're advancing the kingdom in miraculous ways. But it started with just level 1 leaders. And now I'm working with level 5 leaders. And God willing, I'll be working with even higher level leaders in the future.
Yeah. So that's what you've been doing the last 6 years now.
Going on 6, yeah.
And
2 years with COVID, though,
kind of stagnated things.
I've been really going hardcore for about 3 years right now, where I've been investing.
And by the way, speaking of that, how was that like? You're like, all right, I'm ready to come out of the cave. They're forcing me back into the cave.
I loved it. Like everybody else is complaining about COVID. I was like, this is natural for me. I don't have to leave the house. This is perfect.
Especially in SoCal.
Yeah, I loved it. I was very acclimated to that lifestyle.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So you're doing Altar Call. How does it work if somebody wants to do it?
We have we have a couple of initiatives that are pretty powerful, but we have levels of membership. So we have level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. They're all community driven, with the exception of level 4 is where I work with people on a one-on-one basis. Yeah. When I'm working with them on a one-on-one, I have about 15 of those clients. I'm a member of their team. I'm firefighting with them. I'm interviewing candidates. I'm talking to their CFO. I'm making sure that they're running their company in the most viable, scalable way they possibly can. And I'm mentoring them to not make some of the same mistakes that I have, both on the personal side and the professional side. Yeah. So I'm working with them, and then I have coaches on my team that work with the other entrepreneurs. I have a pastor that's been with me for 15 years on staff full time, and other excellent coaches that mentor the entrepreneurs that are not really ready to be at that level 4.
Yeah. Would you say that most of the people that come through, are they already high-level entrepreneurs, like looking to do exits and other things, or like what does the demographic look like?
At the highest end, it's generally a person who has exited, wanting or seeking to exit, or is building and scaling a company above $10 million a year in sales. Yeah. The wisdom that I have and my ability to help serve and drive value, I charge a lot of money. Yeah. So in order for me to get you a huge ROI, you have to have a decent sized playground going on. So I can look at your books, look at your finances, look at your operations, say, okay, here's 3 initiatives that'll help you save money. Here's 3 that'll help you make money. And if we do that, you're going to more than pay for the coaching engagement, right? So that's the kind of promise I have to make. And if they're only running $1 million company and I'm charging them $400,000 for an annual coaching service, they're not going to get a huge ROI in that level of playground.
Yeah. And so the other levels are for, when you're at those levels.
Yeah.
Got it. And so would you say that it's more so about helping them grow a business, but it's coming with like kingdom principles, and you know that your coaches have a kingdom focus?
Yeah, it is. I'm helping them solve problems on the external to identify the problems that need to be solved on the internal.
Okay.
So, if an entrepreneur is building and scaling and the ego creeps in, or greed keeps in, or, they have to buy out a shareholder, or they have to, they're worried about an exit, or they're inviting in a new partner to be a private equity partner. There's a lot of things that we have to pray about and we have to prepare ourselves for. You can only hold the level of company that you have built the vessel for in advance of. Otherwise, it will crash down upon you. Yeah. So you have to build that vessel in advance. And if you have a company that's bigger than your vessel, it's going to fall.
Yeah.
So sometimes I'm called in when the entrepreneur is under deep stress. They're making bad decisions. They're making, some rookie mistakes, so to speak. And I'm helping build the vessel as fast as I can for that entrepreneur so they can hold the level of company they created. When you have an entrepreneur that's suffering and running a great company, it's just that they haven't built the vessel to hold that company.
Yeah. It's interesting. I always tell people, I'm like, look, if you're going to hire a mentor, you got to really get somebody who has the same, I don't want to say morals as you, but like they have all the things that you want. Like, for example, there's lots of great mentors out there who maybe they're not Christian, right? Let's say you're a Christian, they're not Christian. And so they would see the worldview in a totally different way than maybe you would, right? But they know marketing, or they know sales, or they know whatever it is you're going to learn from. But I've always thought about that problem because I'll give you a couple of examples. One would be the idea of being equally yoked that's in the Bible. And I always thought that just meant for marriage, but in reality, it means for your partnerships too.
It does.
And I've learned that the hard way when, if you're a strong believer and they are not, then you're going to naturally have friction and problems with just different decisions you want to make. I think about this too with just how we choose to give as Christians. And it's like, well, this is what you're supposed to do. This is what the Bible says. And it's like, oh, well, what about the company? And what about growth? And what about this? And it's like, if you're not a Christian, then okay, whatever. You don't have to worry about that. And then, even the types of industries that you're going to do business in. So it's like there are very few, I would say, high level Christian like business coaching out there that would understand the parameters of, hey, first and foremost, the Bible is going to guide us in what we do. The other things are secondary. Yeah. And so, most people put the secondary things as the primary things.
Well, the idea of being a good Christian is to be spiritually mature. Mm-hmm. And this is an idea, and you're going to be tested in your walk every day of the week. So a lot of the concepts I would lay out to a non-believer would be foreign. Yeah. They'd say, what are you talking about? Like when I see they plant a weed in their garden, I'm like, this is great. Let's pluck the weed. Another person would not really understand the same frameworks and biblical appreciation for how we build. So there's equally yoked. There's leading with faith. There's looking at all of the external aspects as indicators of what we need to do in terms of our character, and seeing every mistake, every obstacle, every challenge as an invitation to grow stronger in in the kingdom. That's not something that a secular person would really come to appreciation of. So yeah, I definitely think you have to have similar faith and understanding of faith and similar beliefs. They don't have to be identical. Yeah. There's many different ways of doing Christianity. Just, you have to have appreciation. And I'm also looking to do life with the people that I mentor. I want long-term relationships with them. I go to, people's weddings. I'm there when their kids are born. Like, I want to be a part of their life. It's an honor to serve them and their families. This isn't something I take lightly. I saw one of your core values is service. Yeah. Everything I do is in the energy of service, and I'm here to serve them. And so that energy, I choose service over sales. I'm not selling people, I'm serving them. And if my service is good enough, it should sell itself. Yeah, no, I agree. It's interesting. You probably don't know what we do with Wealthy Kingdom, but, and for those who are listening who don't know, so, that's our nonprofit. Yeah. I founded it, almost 2 years ago now.
over a year and a half ago. And we got nonprofit status last year, which was great. But, everything for it was there was no cost or anything like that. It's just, it runs on donations now. But my thing was, I just want to help Christians grow deeper in their faith.
Yeah.
And we don't really necessarily teach business tactics so much like I would in a secular business or what I do over here or what you're doing right now. For me, I'm just like, look, we just need to fix you first and foremost. Like everything else will flow out properly thereafter. But I'm like, we got to first fix your relationship with God. We got to then figure out, man, how does that work with your family? And then how does that work with your finances? Like if we can do those things, your business, your decisions start to become pretty clear of what you should and shouldn't do, in business.
Thank you for doing that work, by the way.
Yeah.
That the world needs that. And business, those of us who we're creating ministries in the marketplace. We really are. And we're filling a gap. One of the mountains is the marketplace. And you are one of those leaders that's filling the gap in the mountain that is the marketplace. So
it's a big mountain.
Yeah, it's the biggest mountain, right? Yeah. Capitalism rules the world at this point. It's not, anything else. So, we got to affect change at the capitalistic level, and we have to change things deeply in the way capitalism is operating and bring more values and bring faith back to capitalism and treat people with dignity. And I think there's a lot of modern day gurus out there that are not faith-based. They're doing a disservice to those of us that are out there trying to teach people how to become better human beings and lead better enterprises and make change in the marketplace. And so thank you for your contribution to the marketplace.
Yeah, no, I love it. It's definitely my passion. And, even one of the things we talk about is just the idea of stewardship. And it's like, man, if God's given you the ability to go make a bunch of money or to lead people or to throw events or to, have employees and these people who are underneath you, it's like, look, you're going to now be accountable for that.
Yeah.
And it's like, you just look at the parable of the talents, you look at all these different things, and it's like, God is going to, he's going to look at how you stewarded everything he gave you. And if you don't do a good job with it, well, it doesn't mean you're not saved, but he is going to look at it.
Yeah.
And, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out in eternity.
Well, the way I look at it is we get assigned a role. Right? And a role assignment is one of the most important things that we can take upon. I was assigned the role of being a caretaker of land. And in that role, I have to pick up every piece of trash. I have to be a good steward of the land. So if you're assigned the role of leader, the role of entrepreneur, the role of running this team, running that team, it's a spiritual assignment. And you have to do it to the best of your ability and exercise your gifts as such.
Yeah.
Right? So it's an assignment of a role, is the way I see it. So anytime I take on a role, it's as though God assigned it to me directly, and I have to do my very best that I can in that role, even if it's to be a mentor to you for one night or for 1 year. It's like, that's a role that's been assigned to me. I do not take that lightly.
Well, I also say too, it's like, we were talking about this. So we have two main things that we do. Actually we have three. One is we have events. So we'll have big revival events that are free. People can come. We'll pray over people for hours. We'll do, crazy awesome worship, and then we'll do training and all this stuff. So that's like, those are called Kingdom Nights for anyone interested. Second thing we have is like online community where people can just join for free. We have Zoom calls every week, all that stuff. But the third one that I really enjoy, and really what was the catalyst behind all this, was we do these Bible studies. So last year we had over 3,000 Bible studies.
Wow.
That met in offices and homes and everything else.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And with that, it started because I've been holding a Bible study for 8 years. Every week. Doesn't stop. It just keeps rolling.
Yeah.
And one thing I've always said is like, guys, as business, because they're all entrepreneurs, right? They could be in real estate, tech, whatever, right? And I always say, I'm like, guys, like, our businesses should be the best. Like, as Christians, if we're going to be a reflection of Christ, everything Christ did was excellent.
Yeah.
It wasn't subpar. It wasn't, half effort. It wasn't lukewarm. It was all with excellence. And so if I throw an event, I want it to be with excellence. If I have somebody on my podcast, I want it to be with excellence. If I have somebody buy a product or service, like let's do it with excellence. Like we shouldn't need to be Christian to attract people. The product should just be better.
The product should be the fruits of the Spirit.
Yeah.
And when you meet one of us, you shouldn't even have to ask us. You should just be like, clearly that guy's doing something different.
Yeah.
He's glowing. He's peaceful. He's patient. He's good. He's kind. He's gentle. He's faithful.
Yeah.
He has self-control. He has goodness, right? Like
Yeah.
we should be embodiments of the fruit that people walk up to us and say, whatever you got, I want a piece of it.
Yeah.
We shouldn't have to tell you anything. We just show you.
Yeah.
Look at my business. Look at my life. And that should be the invitation to learn more about our faith.
Yep. And I mean, I always use Chick-fil-A. They're such a good example of like, they're the best. It's just, nobody can debate that there's a better fast food chain out there. It's not even in terms of product, profitability, customer service. They would be better than everyone at all of them.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what we should be embodying. But I really believe the fruits of the Spirit are the key thing that we should focus on, and that our business should embody those fruits in such a way in our teams. You know, when you go to a good church and, you know, you pull into the parking lot and you meet a person that's just activated, they're switched on. Our team should look like that.
Yeah.
Every person in the company, your company does that. You know, from the moment I walked in the door, I show up, people come and shake my hand. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. I get a tour right away. Every person that I bumped into on the tour was activated.
Yeah.
Your business is an embodiment of the fruits of the Spirit. And I mean, that's an acknowledgement to you and your leadership. Every one of our businesses should feel and look exactly the same way.
Yep.
And it's a pleasure to work with a business that is activated. And you guys definitely have that here.
Yeah. Thank you. No, it means a lot. And it's funny. I was in a group. I was in this little mastermind, and so we would sometimes meet here at my office, and most of them are non-believers. They're like, dude, why is everyone so friendly? And like, so like I had 5 people ask me if I needed a drink.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know. Like, it's just the culture. I don't tell people to do it. You know, it's the fruit.
Yeah.
And like, our company's not like that.
Yeah.
But they're doing great. They're making a lot of money. They're making more money than me.
Yeah.
But it's like, is that what it's about?
Yeah. Many entrepreneurs, I have a saying that either you are training them or they're training you. So you're an entrepreneur and you have 100 team members.
Yeah.
You have 100 people training you or you're training 100 people.
Right.
So that's one of the pieces of wisdom I teach entrepreneurs. So you clearly train your people. You know, they're clearly being trained. And it's a testament to your leadership and your faith. Other entrepreneurs, they don't know that they need to be constantly training, correcting, teaching people the better way nonstop in order to create a culture that is fun to work in, that's exciting. I was good friends with the person out of Las Vegas that's no longer with us, named Tony Hsieh. And he was a pioneer. He was a pioneer of cultures. And when you walked into his culture, it embodied his virtues and who he was. And he was very intelligent in the way he structured and built his cultures. And he taught me a lot about building cultures. And, I build them differently, of course, than the culture that he built. But, you have to be very intentional in the way you build your culture. Otherwise, you will have an environment that you do not like to work in as a founder and as a CEO. Yeah. It'll be a company that steals a life from you, that literally drains you because you either are training them or they're training you.
This just made me think about something you said earlier about the input-output ratio, because I was kind of dwelling on that, because I've definitely had seasons in life where I have had to do significantly more output, right? Like you're in fires, you're in drama, the economy's tough, you're having to output more force than ever before. And then there are times where, things are maybe peaceful and rolling and they're good and you kind of like can let things go. But one thing I guess for me that never really changed was my input. So even though my output has always changed, it's like I have this minimum standard of input, and I've had it for a long time. So probably for like the last 10 years, it's like every morning, I read my Bible, I pray, I memorize scripture. I've been doing that for 10 years. Every week we do a Bible study. That's how this nonprofit started. Every Sunday we're going to go to church. So it's like, I've had wilderness seasons in business and drama and things, but like the input never changed. And so like, I never had like a breakdown or these things. And I think it's like, I guess one thing I would add to people, and this is what's making me think about how do you impart to 100 people? It's like, you have to constantly be inputted into?
You want to have a consistent input plan no matter what. You can't. You have to have discipline on. But in some seasons, you'll have more desire and more capacity. For example, if I were to recommend a book, some seasons you buy it the next day, you read it that weekend.
Yeah.
You get back to me and you say, Ryan, I read it. It was amazing. Oops, sorry. My bad.
Yeah.
You get back to me and you say, Ryan, that book was amazing. In other seasons, you buy the book because you have the desire, but you don't have the capacity to read it.
Right.
It sits there for a month or two.
Yep.
So every season you have a different input ability, but yes, to your point, you must have discipline and there must be some fundamentals. Your spiritual practices in the morning, to me, I never miss a day without first doing my spiritual practices.
Yeah.
But in other seasons, I might consume more, read more. I might fast more, which is a form of input.
Yep.
So, you're always dialing it in and up, but you have to have a consistent input ratio in practices at all times.
And one thing that I've kind of realized with it is, because people have asked me that, they're like, how do you know when it's time to grind, when it's time to and I say, essentially, let's take all the areas of life. You essentially always have a minimum standard. And there are some seasons where you're going to go way higher than that. And some seasons where you'll fall to the minimum standard. Yeah. The key is you never want to not have a standard and it just goes totally deplete.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, if that's my minimum standard on the spiritual side, all those things have been the minimum standard for almost a decade.
Yeah.
To your point, there are times where I'm like, oh dude, I'm on fire. I'm going to read books.
Yeah.
I'm going to go get discipled. I'm going to do more. Right. And then that season ends.
Yeah. That's input. Yeah. I'm going to get out there. I'm going to invest more on the inside than I am in the actions on the outside.
Yep. And then in business, it's like, okay, my standard is, hey, I'm going to work, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. That's just what we do. But man, sometimes I got to put in more work either before or after, and it's just we're going through a season. Yeah. Right.
Some seasons, you have to take more action. If your back's in the corner, if there's an opportunity that's time to seize, my business is in exceptional growth right now. I have much more output than ever. In fact, I'm working harder at 47 years old than I ever have worked in my entire life, period.
And is it all with UltraCall or other things?
Well, UltraCall serves so many companies and I have equity stakes in some of them. And, and so I have my hand involved in lots of wonderful projects. And so I'm doing more right now in this season because it's growing, it's scaling, times are wonderful. And so my output ratio is far higher than my input ratio in the season.
I want to ask you about that in a minute, but to finish the thought, it's even with health, for me, I've always been in shape.
Yeah.
Very rarely does it change because I just know my minimum standard of how I want to look. But man, I've been a lot more shredded than I currently am, because it's just I'm at my minimum standard essentially right now. And I think that's just important for everyone to know. It's whatever your minimum standard is, always have that. And then, there's just times when you're going to go above and beyond that.
Well, I'll tell you how I implement that similar system in business. My sales team has a standards of excellence that they have to achieve. They have a speed to lead. So when leads come in, we're running ads. They have talk time, number of calls over 3 minutes per day, number of records that they touch per day, and number of appointments that they set per day.
Yep.
Right. And they have to stand up every day and they have to account for their standards of excellence. Did they achieve them? And if they don't achieve them, they have to make up for them. So if it's 200 dials today and they only got 190 in yesterday, they got to do 210 today.
Yep.
And so that's how I run my life.
Even it out. Yep.
That's how I run my business. We're all accountable for our minimum standards of excellence. This is what excellence looks like.
Yeah.
And of course, personal records are different. You could do 300 dials in a day, but the minimum's 200. You better deliver your 200. And if you don't, because you got sick or something happened, we make up for it. Yeah. This is the way I run my companies, the way I run my life.
It's funny. I just told my assistant, Tiffany over there, that I feel myself getting a little soft. So I'm just not going to eat on Wednesdays. I literally told her that last week. I'm like, don't get me a meal prep. I'm literally going to fast the whole day. Yeah. And I'm going to eat one meal. And I think that if I do that for the next couple of months, macro wise, I'll hit my goals without changing the other days.
Now, when you fast, make it about God.
Exactly.
Right? Because there's fasting and making it about the flesh and about, the body and cleansing the body. Yeah. There's fasting, to get in alignment with God. Yeah. And then having the Bible with you. I fast, last week I fasted one day. I'll fast one day this week too, on Thursday. And I'll have the Bible with me and I'll go deeper into my spiritual practice. I'll still do my meetings, but in the gaps, I'll be in that Bible and my spiritual practices every step of the way. So that's a practice that I utilize when I'm seeking to shift. Two things will shift us: giving, right? Giving and tithing, and fasting. Right. So those are if you want an energy shift, you want to, hit the next level, hit the gas, you either tithe or you fast. And those are the two things you can dial in to increase your energy. Yeah.
No, I love it. I love it. So back to the businesses that you're currently involved with, because they're an altar call. You guys are, you have equity in some of these businesses. One of the shifts that God has put on my life is I used to be I don't even know what you'd call it, but a horizontal entrepreneur where I had lots of companies. And I was really good at growing companies to $1 million, a few million. I'm like, okay, cool. That's at a few million. Let's do another one at a few million, another one at a few million. And, just kind of go about it that way. And then, you just realize you only have so much capacity. Each company needs its own funnels, its own problems, its own campaigns. And I'm just like, after a while, I realized like, wow, everybody tells you it, but you don't know it till you go through it, that it'd be better to just go deeper, on one. And so now I'm doing that. And I'm excited about it. Like, I think that things can really just, for the first time in my life, just go even, like, we've accomplished a lot doing it the wrong way. And now I'm like going deep. So what I heard you say was, man, like you're involved with a lot of these businesses.
Well, a little different. I agree with you 100%. Go deep.
And I know you're not the founder and you're not there 40, 50 hours a week. So I understand that. I'm just curious, like capacity wise, thinking through all their problems. So
a couple of things on that. So one, I agree with you as well. I had a small venture fund and I invested in a bunch of companies. God has increased my capacity. So this is a calling. The vision that came to me the other day is I've been playing chess for 27 years. This is chess. Some board games I look at and they're, an amateur game. The person's doing 10 million a year in sales and, maybe 2 million in profit. Do this, do that. You're now doing 3 million in profit, 15 million a year in sales. And then I moved to the other chessboard. So I don't have to spend a lot of time on the chessboard. I also have a very competent team that supports me. I have analysts on the team that get me prepared for my meetings so I can come in and out. I can help problem solve and move on to the next game very quickly. The thing that they have all in common is that they're advancing the kingdom and they've all agreed that they're going to tithe. So the more success I make them, the more they tithe, or more I help them make, I should say. And to your point, I only do this with highly competent people. I don't take on incompetent people. I have to take on people that have a strong desire and they have strong capacity. So, I don't take equity stakes in just anyone. Many people offer me opportunities to join their boards. I decline. I'm only doing it when I say, I'm going to regret if I don't get involved in this entrepreneur, right? Like, I'll look back and say, I have a dog food company called Happy How, for example. The entrepreneur came to me, he's doing $3,000 a month. I gave my dog his food. It healed her hot spots. It's an all natural food. I was like, I'm going to regret not helping this guy because my dog loves the product. This is a small company. It's $3,000 a month. Now it's doing on its way to $1 million a month. A big company just invested in it. The entrepreneur is scaling quite rapidly. And it's a pleasure to serve him and his family and help him see how he's building a $100 million company. So these are the ones that I have a very strong selection process. I vet people aggressively, and I only work with people that I believe stylistically that I can help scale. And I'm not for everyone. That doesn't mean that everybody I reject is bad, but I'm moving very quickly. I'm very decisive. I'm going to call people forward, hold them accountable aggressively. I'm not for everyone. So, I tell people pretty clearly, this is what you can expect with me. And I don't say yes to everyone for that reason, because I don't want my hands in a bunch of businesses that drain me. The customers that I have are so life-giving that after a call, like I had a call with a doctor that has multiple practices on Sunday, I was excited to share a piece of my Sunday with him to help him advance his movement, because he's doing God's work out there. So it's an act of service.
No, I love it. What about, you had mentioned this earlier, but you're talking about AI. Is that one of those people that has that company, or that's something you're working on?
So God called me to start aggressively building an AI about 3 years ago. I hired my first PhD on this. I come from a technology background and software background, and I worked in AI-based companies. I'd invested in companies. I've been involved in some pretty amazing companies. So I had some basis of understanding and some engineering capacity and understanding there. So I just started hiring because I needed to scale the coaching that I was doing. And I started hiring engineers, and I built an AI platform that does what we call autonomous coaching. So as I coach an entrepreneur, they deploy my software within their organization, and it coaches their team autonomously. So they don't need coaching.
How,
for
like,
their
is
teams.
it like you as a virtual avatar? Like, what is it?
No, my ego didn't do that. I just used a standard avatar for it. It's AlterCall. I'm building a company, that's going to have a legacy beyond mine, my lifetime, I should say. They have interaction with a LLM that has my content that's trained on that. But beyond that, we've integrated personality testing, and we've integrated with Zoom and other like Meet and Teams we're rolling out very soon here. And so we analyze their language of their company, the communications of their company. And basically the thesis is, we want to change how people act in companies. But how do you change that? Well, you change the way they think. But how do you know how people think? You look at how they speak.
Yeah.
So I take in all of the language within the company. I built models that help me enhance their communications, that help me understand the level of ego that they're operating with within the company. And then these models then give them promptings as to how they can improve in their culture with every communication that they have. So every management sync, every leadership sync, they're getting coaching.
Got it. Okay. And the goal is to roll that out across just everywhere, help all companies.
Eventually, any kingdom-centric company, we want our software to be implemented in.
Got it.
Yeah, and we're in many organizations right now, and we're adding. Every day we're adding new ones.
Where do you see the world going with AI and all that?
I think that the AI that we're building will one day run companies.
Wow.
So I don't mean that. I don't mean that if companies are operating at a 50% capacity rate, there's got to be ways to improve this, right? And I believe AI will improve companies and increase performance dramatically. And I believe that eventually you'll have AI that is integral to the leadership of a company, and we plan to build out that AI.
But in the big picture, like, where do you see the world going? Like, I've thought about it a lot, and I'm like, I'm a firm believer that AI will continue to replace, a lot of just repetitive jobs, right? And then, it can even now do high level jobs, right? Like a lot of engineers are going to get replaced by AI, Oh
yeah.
It's like, where does this go? What happens to people? Where do they find, we know that purpose is in Christ, but for work, right? God created us to work. So what do they end up doing? Does UBI become a thing? Like, how does all this play out, you think?
I've thought about this a lot.
Yeah.
And my wife is a former NASA scientist that works in robotics. And she was doing robotics in the housing industry for
when did you get married, by the way?
November.
Oh,
yeah. Just I'm a newlywed.
There we go. I was going to ask you if you're married because I know that most of it you weren't.
Yeah. So I'm newlywed. By the grace of God, I met my wife, and we're happily married, and she works in, she was working at a company called Icon, which is doing 3D printed homes, and she led their engineering and architecture group.
I want to hear about that. Yeah. I've talked about 3D printed homes a lot, but okay, we'll talk about that in a sec.
So my wife is on the building side, 3D printed homes. And so we talk a lot about robotics and labor.
Okay.
And replacing labor jobs. So you have the people coming after white collar jobs, and you have the people coming after labor jobs. There are massive capital forces that are going after every job that you can possibly imagine. So what does that leave humanity to do?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering.
It's gonna change the way we value human beings. Right now, human beings are primarily valued by the amount of money they make, which means the amount of economic value they create for our capitalistic society. Nothing wrong with that, right? Like, you create a lot of jobs, you're valuable in this society, right? But if there's no more jobs to create, then how do we value a man?
Yeah.
How do we value a woman, right? Because right now we value people in short by the amount of jobs that they create for our society, indirectly, meaning, and then what they get to keep is a lesser amount than what they create and value, right?
Right.
So that's the primary means of valuing a human being, and that will change, and that's a good thing. We should not be valued by, the amount of money that we have. We should be valued by the amount of good that we do, by the way that we serve, by the way that we help others, by the way that we steward our land, our properties, the earth as a whole. So I think the value equation will change for humanity over time.
Yeah. When do you think this happens? And like, give some examples.
God willing, in my lifetime, right?
Yeah.
I'd love to see.
So would you start getting paid for serving different people? Would you get paid for your creativity and things you design? Like,
there's so many needs out there that are unmet, right? There's needs of nutrition, there's needs of food, there's needs of medicine, there's needs of alternatives to medicine, there's needs in housing, there's needs in recycling. There's so many unmet needs right now that our planet has, that humanity will be incented to go fix, because we won't have to work on some of the problems that are so simple to solve. There's more complicated problems to solve. Like, how do we create an economic incentive to clean up the ocean, for example? That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Right. That'd be great. I'd love to have cleaner water.
Yeah.
And so I think that we'll look at other problems and we'll find ways to monetize those other problems that we're not looking at now, because it's so glaringly obvious that there's so much monetization opportunity in some of the problems that have been with us for 100 years. Once those problems are solved by AI and by robotics, we'll naturally go looking as entrepreneurs for other problems to solve.
And then eventually AI will solve those too.
It could be, and then maybe you will have a utopia where,
Yeah, what happens in the utopia
So
state?
biblically, there will always be work to be done, because humanity will always be flawed and sinful.
Yeah.
There's no way that AI is going to fix the sinning nature of humans, because that is a part of our programming.
Yeah.
So as a result of that, there's always going to be work to do, because there's always going to be a baby that doesn't have a mother or a father.
Yep.
There's always going to be somebody sick that needs help being taken care of. There's always going to be a need for people to do work in humanity. The jobs will change and the nature of them will change, but there will always be needs.
Do you think that UBI will be a thing?
I'm not a big proponent of it, because I was raised in, poverty, and I worked my way out of it. And my mom refused to go on welfare, and she refused to take dollars from people. And I saw that, and that meant something to me. I've defied the odds, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I believe it's good for society to have people that are hungry and that want to work. I don't like a society where no one has any desire to work. During COVID, I saw people that worked for me, say, gardeners and people like that, getting hundreds of thousands of dollars in government assistance. It reduced their appetite to work.
Yeah.
They didn't have the same desire to work. So giving people money for doing nothing is not a good solution to productivity.
Got it. What about these 3D homes? Because I'm a proponent of Moore's Law. It's just like, man, as things just keep getting better and better with tech, it's just going to exponentially increase. And, I think that tech creates deflation naturally. And, that means that everything just becomes better for people, right? Yeah. Deflation is actually a good thing for society, even though, as investors, we like inflation. So those are the competing forces at work. But like, one thing I've always said is like, okay, you have this housing crisis in real estate. And that's one thing I've always put my brain around. I'm like, man, how do you solve affordability? Because right now, things are really unaffordable for most people. Rent's high, interest rates, they're not high historically, but they're high for today with where prices are. Very few people can afford a home. It's a weird time. I
worry about that a lot, because as you recall in my early journey, part of my initial wealth creation is I bought my first home.
Yeah.
I was 21 years old. I had a starter home.
21-year-olds ain't doing that.
Yeah, I starter home. I was able to put a low amount of money down. I was able to buy a condo. It appreciated in value. I created equity, and I then invested that equity into businesses. So that doesn't exist today.
Most 30-year-olds don't own a home.
Yeah. So I worry about that as a foundation of building equity in our society. That while I defied the odds, I had an opportunity to buy a home at an early age.
Yeah, and you got to just kind of like, one thing I always have to do is take myself out of it. Of like, oh, well, here's what I would do. Duh.
Yeah.
It's like, but okay, what's normal society going to do? And one thing I've always said is like, I'm like, technology is going to fix the problem. That is the only way this gets fixed.
I agree.
Because we actually have like an infinite amount of land.
Well, there's government regulation, particularly in California, for example. The fact that we just had the Palisades fires and everything else, the fact that it takes so many years to build.
It's crazy.
You know, we need to strip out building regulations everywhere in this country and just rethink how we build, both from an infrastructure standpoint and from a home standpoint. So governmentally, we got to solve this problem to fix the housing crisis. That, you know, and then there's corruption. Like in LA, these low-income housing that are costing like $1 million per unit to build, or homeless housing at $1 million a unit. You or I could go build homeless housing at $10,000 a unit that would be suitable and be better than the experience that they're having right now. But yet, you know, these politicians get involved and everything inflates. So we have to change leadership. We have to change how we're doing things politically, and we have to become a building economy again to solve the problem. And then technology can do its, you know, have its place.
Yeah, I saw Trump went out there. I don't know how long ago this was, but it was like a funny interaction. He's like talking to, I don't know if it was the mayor or whatever. He's like, yeah, so what, we going to get this cleaned up or what? Like, what are we doing? She's like, oh, well, we got to make sure it's safe. He's like, for who? Yeah. Like, what are we talking about? Just clean it.
Yeah, just fix the problem now.
Yeah, well, we want to make sure who's in danger here. Yeah. It's over. Clean it up.
Yeah, the California and LA building is the most corrupt nonsense you've ever heard of in your life. And there's interests that don't want you to build because obviously if I own a $100 million home in Malibu, I don't want you building anywhere near there, especially not homes sub 100 million. I only want you building $200 million homes so you can increase my property value. So I'm gonna do everything I can by the power of my lobby and my wealth to stop from homes being built there.
Yeah. Yep, less supply.
Right? I mean, supply and demand. Yeah. So there are some corrupt forces on the wealth side that are keeping on the supply side priced very high. Yeah. And so, you know, we see this with these homes trading at hundreds of millions of dollars, keeping the market priced high. So I think the market will go through a correction, or interest rates will have to come down very soon here.
Well, this is the scary thing about tech and deflation for anybody who owns real estate, because it's like, all right, your wife's doing the 3D printing and stuff. I'm so excited about that because I think that that's how all this gets fixed. Like imagine a world where, you know, because I was saying earlier, land's not the problem. Yeah. You could go out an hour out of LA and go get cheap land anywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And people don't mind driving an hour in LA. That's pretty normal.
Yeah.
So, you know, you go out, you get this cheap land. Okay, what are your next problems? Okay, well, permits. Like you said,
permits. So
that's the main problem. Second problem, okay, material costs. Then third problem is labor, right? Yeah. Can you get enough people? Well, 3D homes solve all of them. Yeah. Because if it's already pre-approved, okay, that's one. Time, I mean, these things, they can crank out a home, I mean, in the
2
future,
weeks.
instantly, like in the future. There's no labor required. One person operates the thing. And it's like, wow, okay, well, if you could create a ton of supply that quickly, that cheaply, well, now you have great affordable housing, but what's that do for the rest of the properties that, you know, now all of a sudden are being devalued because people can go like buy one of these 3D homes that theoretically are more energy efficient, that are technologically better, that are a fraction of the price,
more resilient to weather,
everything about it's fire, better. Yeah. You may not like the look.
Yeah. But the looks are getting gorgeous. Icon has some gorgeous homes. Like some of those, I've been in them. They're amazing.
Yeah, and I know like their cost isn't quite down yet.
Not yet.
But in time, technology will get there. Like I just watched what Tesla does, and I always use this example. It's like, you know, 10 years ago, Elon's like, hey guys, our cars are going to have more tech. They're going to drive you. They're going to be faster. They're not going to need gas. They won't need maintenance. They're going to need all these things, and it's going to be cheaper.
Yeah.
And people are like, what?
Yeah, I've been on, I've spent some time, it's her company, not mine. So she's the expert on it. But I have some insights into it based on just proximity. And I can tell you they're driving the cost down. They're improving the quality. They're increasing the speed.
Everything's going to get better.
This is the future.
That's what I said.
But we're, 10 years out from you and I ordering a home, having it printed, and then showing up a couple of weeks later and getting occupancy.
Going and living in it.
Yeah. But that's 10 years out.
That solves the affordability crisis. Like if they can get their costs down, we can get the land anywhere.
Yeah.
It's like, bro, okay. Your home's going to be here in a month.
Yeah.
And you want it 2,400 square feet or 2,600?
Yeah.
What do you want?
Yeah. I've been involved. I've toured the facilities a bunch of times and been to some of their meetings. And of course, I've heard my wife talking a lot about this subject extensively, and it's coming our way.
Yeah. What do you think? Yeah. Cause I think about that as a real estate investor, and I'm like, I see the problem you presented about the Malibu home.
Yeah.
Because if they come in and they go literally build a home for 1/10 of the normal build cost, like what happens? Do you just value the older homes out of just, oh, these were hand built, these were man-made or whatever?
Yeah,
like, I don't know how
it's a diamond, a mine diamond versus a lab diamond kind of thing, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a handmade home.
That's what I think happens. Like that has to be what happens.
Yeah, we'll see. Right now, the biggest opportunity I would think in these places are the first-time home buyers and the lower income areas to really get a replication going there, where you have a high you have a high output ratio. Customized homes is much more complicated. The buyer is much more discerning. I think that comes down the road. So I don't think that 3D printing is coming for the $100 million home. They're coming for the
housing.
$100,000 home, or $500,000 in LA.
Yeah, but man, if you could get a brand new home for $500K in LA, it's all of a sudden affordable again.
Yeah, we need more so than for anything. We need the 21-year-old and 22-year-old to start creating equity value and not just renting. And we need that to happen right away.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, dude, I could chat with you all day, man. There's so many
great
topics, but it's awesome what you're doing. If anyone wants to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
Just go to Instagram. I'm at Real Ryan Blair on Instagram, or you can go to altercall.com, and it's ALTERCALL.com.
How much was that domain? That's a good domain.
It was a gift. It came to me and it was available. God said Altar Call.
Really?
And I typed it in and it was there, and that's my company.
That's crazy. My one of my pastors, his name's Matty Montgomery. He's actually our head pastor at Wealthy Kingdom. His church is called The Altar. But dang, that's crazy to think that altercall.com was just available.
Well, it's ALTER as opposed to ALTAR.
Oh yeah, is altar with an A or a T?
It's an A. So the altar at church is the A, but the altar.
I get it.
So it's the idea of altering is to go
alter
inward,
yourself.
Alter to answer your call.
That makes sense. I honestly wouldn't even have known how to spell the difference.
Yeah, so. I didn't either. In fact, that's why I wound up on altercall.com. And then
you thought you were getting the right thing.
Truth.
Yeah, that's so funny. Well, guys, check it out. Altercall.com. Real Ryan Blair on Instagram. Go check it out, and we'll catch you on the next one. Peace.